Imagine if suddenly an intense solar radiation causes a high-temperature apocalypse with a scarcity of resources. The world becomes so hot that planet Blue Star's ecosystem undergoes a drastic change overnight. Just a single drop of water could provoke desperate fights. In this apocalypse, water has become the most precious commodity. Yet, the protagonist of this story, Chun Xiao, not only built a safe house that boasts an enormous independent power generator, but it also features all-day air conditioning and endless supplies. And this was all because he stockpiled enough supplies to last 10 lifetimes before the apocalypse arrived. On the Luocheng pedestrian street on March 2, 2030, inside a shady high-interest loan company, Chen Xiao was asked if he really knew what it meant to borrow 5 million yuan from the Luocheng underground moneylender. The boss of the Dahal gang, Zhang Yang, lights up a cigarette in an intimidating fashion and adds that the interest rate he charges was a bit high. Scared as hell, Chen Xiao replied that he knew. But as long as Zhang Yang was willing to lend him the money, the high interest rate doesn't matter. Zhang Yang agreed to offer 5 million with a 4% daily interest rate. So Chen Xiao would have to pay back 7 million within half a year later. And although he needs to write an IOU for the 7 million, he also needed to provide a collateral of equal value. Chen Xiao immediately takes out his house property deed and tells Zhang Yang to have a look. Upon doing so, Zhang Yang feigned being a bit disappointed as he informs Chen Xiao that his house looks a bit old and would be worth 3 to 4 million at most in the current market. Inwardly, he was pleased to see a 140 square meter flat apartment being used as a high-interest collateral. Zhang Yang saw Chen Xiao as an easy prey delivered right on his doorstep. With a smirk, he then proceeds to tell Chen Xiao that the house wasn't quite enough for a $4 million loan. Panicked, Chen Xiao started to beg for help, even agreeing to take just 4 million and mentioning that some master predicted he have good luck. Zhang Yang drops the offer to 3.5 million, thinking he's already got the gambling addict on the hook. Chen Xiao accepts immediately, thanking him and promising to pay it all back very soon. Zhang Yang lays down the final condition, thus to pay back 4.9 million in 3 months, or the house is his. Chen Xiao agrees to the terms without a problem, but he has one condition of his own. He stares down the mob boss and lays out his condition, making Zhang curious. 10 minutes later, Chen Xiao walked out of the place as he was thanked for his patronage, then told to take care. A moment later, Chen Xiao gets a notification for 3,500,000 yuan in his account. He thinks to himself what an idiot Zhang Yang was, because in 1 month, the apocalypse will hit and no one's going to be paying back any loans. Chen Xiao remembers that in his past life, a terrifying natural disaster descended upon planet Blue Star, drastically changing the entire planet's ecosystem. Intense solar radiation raised the global average temperature close to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Humanity faced a high-temperature apocalypse that lasted for 30 days. Afterwards, monstrous creatures started popping up out of nowhere. Back to the present, Zhang Yang was delighted that Chen Xiao had dared to raise the interest rate just to disperse the money immediately. Sure enough, a gambling addict like him didn't deserve to have such a house. His subordinate gets worried and asks if it might be a trap since the house was worth over 4 million. But Zhang Yang says he's seen gamblers who would sell their own family for cash, so a house was nothing. He then orders his men to rig the casino to take the house and even sell the kid off for parts if possible. On the streets, Chen Xiao stares at his phone, still reeling about how fast the old fool practically sent the money after he jacked up the interest rate, believing he'd caught an easy prey. And apparently, Chen Xiao had taken money from every loan shark in the city and wasn't afraid of high interest rates. With a wicked smile, he thinks with the cash in hand, no one will ever be able to get it back from him. You see, when the apocalypse arrives, the earth would dry up, vegetation would wither, creatures would mutate, and the world's infrastructure would collapse. Back then, resources became extremely scarce and everyone resorted to unscrupulous means to obtain a little survival supplies. Possessing resources meant possessing supreme wealth in the middle of all that chaos. Even billionaires and celebrities begged and groveled for food and water to avoid a tragic end. But now that he's been reborn, Chen Xiao has plenty of time to prepare before the disaster strikes. While he's in a convenience store, he hears a noise and looks over to see 2 women who were talking about a legendary ice cream called the Ice Cream Assassin. It was incredibly expensive. And hearing that, Chen Xiao's face twists into an expression of pure rage. He remembers buying that expensive ice cream for her bitchy girlfriend in his previous life. Now just the memory of it makes him absolutely furious and wants to try it himself. So, he walks up to the counter and asks for 10 of every single type of ice cream the store had. The 2 girls were stunned, wondering if he can even afford it and thinking he looks pretty cool placing the order. The cashier was also in shock and asks if the customer is serious about the order. She warns him that the store only sells high-end ice creams and 10 of each would cost over 20,000 yuan. Upon hearing this, One of the women scoffs at Chun Xiao's appearance, and even promised to kowtow to him in public if he actually pays for the purchase. Chun Xiao then turns to her and asks if she's serious. Flustered, the woman even mocks him for not having the ability to make her kneel, adding that he was a loser. With a smirk, Chun Xiao says he gave her a chance, but now she's gonna have to kneel and not even a divine intervention can stop it. The bitchy redhead was furious at Chun Xiao's audacity, whereas he simply mocks her with a teasing smile. He then asks the cashier to bag everything up and shows his phone with a balance of over 2 million. The cashier was speechless and asks for permission to consult with the manager. A moment later, the manager, Fei Qi, introduces himself before Chun Xiao made him calculate the price of all the ice cream in the entire store. Delighted as hell, Fei Qi starts crunching the numbers, thinking this one customer just covered the sales for the whole month. He reports that the products on display were worth 70,000. And as for the entire stock, the total comes to 1 million. But 1 million wasn't that expensive to Chun Xiao, so he might as well empty the entire stock before the apocalypse hits. That way, he would get to enjoy such top-notch ice cream at home during the apocalypse. Chun Xiao decides to transfer a 300,000 deposit and asks for everything to be delivered to an address. Turning to the women in the store, he informs them that they can have any ice cream they want today. He introduces himself as Chun Xiao, then boldly declares his intention to pay for everything, leaving the women completely impressed. He then turns to the redhead and exempts her from his offer, but was still waiting for her to kowtow to him. Humiliated, she drops to her knees and cries, whereas Chun Xiao looks down on her with disdain. Chun Xiao asks why she had to be so pretentious when she knew this would be the final outcome. Later, sitting on a bench, he tries the ice cream and notes that the flavor really was top-notch. As he was in the middle of enjoying the bar of ice cream, a strange energy starts to radiate from him. A dimensional space appears and he realizes he can store items in there forever, keeping them perfectly fresh. With a grin, he believes that with this power, he'll be able to summon celebrities and models whenever he feels like it during the apocalypse. Surprised and excited, Chun Xiao stated that he didn't expect to be reborn with his ability too. This even made him recall several ability users who gradually awakened after the apocalypse arrives. Anyway, even though he didn't understand why he was reborn, he was fully aware that his ability would be his greatest asset going forward. Now he needs to build a secure shelter and stock up on food, weapons, and energy reserves. Sighing heavily, he thinks of the many things he's got to do. His phone then starts ringing, interrupting his thoughts about preparations. Checking the call, he sees the name Lu Wanqing and grumbles about his rotten luck. He glares at the name of the woman who left such a negative mark on his past. A memory surfaces of when Lu Wanqing appeared in his life like a ray of light right after his parents passed away. But the truth was, she was only after his inheritance and demanded an apartment and a dowry of 880,000 yuan. Lu Wanqing was a bottomless pit who drained all of his savings and even suggested selling his inheritance. He remembers how in the end, she wanted to sell his family's ancestral home just to buy an apartment for herself. In his past life, she introduced him to a powerful man saying he was the special material the guy was looking for. When the apocalypse hit, he tried to protect her, but the bitch sold him off like a cattle to team up with someone stronger. His captors then found him boring and simply considered whether they should just use him as food. In the end, not even his body was left in one piece. Back to the present, he smiles with a clear thirst for revenge. Since Lu Wanqing called him, it was time to settle the score. As the scene shifts to a luxury hotel, Lu Wanqing hears Chun Xiao asking if something was wrong. Lu Wanqing feigned being heartbroken and explained that she was out with some friends and accidentally lost a gold necklace she really loved. With a wicked grin, Chun Xiao expressed his desire to buy her a new one. In fact, he promised to buy her 10. Lu Wanqing is surprised by Chun Xiao's generosity, and he lied that he'd made a little profit investing in crypto, so he had decided to spend some on her. Lu Wanqing warns him about potential scams, but Chun Xiao replied that he was tired of playing small, so he had decided to invest big. Chun Xiao then reveals he needs a loan and wants her to be a witness, offering 5% of the amount as a fee. Stepping out of the bathroom, an old man asks why she was taking so long in the shower. Lu Wanqing's tone immediately turns coquettish, pleading with the old geezer, whom she calls Honey, to wait just a little longer. She would be ready right away. She thinks to herself that the old geezer only gives her 5,000 a night, but signing the paper for Chun Xiao will get her 50,000 with zero risk. And at that moment on the other end, Chun Xiao's expression turns wicked just thinking of having his revenge. He expressed his desire of waiting for the bitch to fall into his trap. Anyway, the scene then shifts to a high-rise building, where Chun Xiao meets a specialist who would be in charge of building his safe house. According to Chun Xiao, within 1 month, he wants his apartment to become an impenetrable fortress. The windows need 3-meter bulletproof composite glass with invisible anti-theft mesh installed. The walls should also be reinforced into 3-meter bulletproof exterior walls, earthquake resistance rating of and/or higher. The entire roof should be paved with solar panels, plus an independent power generation system to ensure electricity, configured with an air purification filtration system to prevent external toxic gases from entering. Independent ecological system including 72 hours of oxygen supply and a water circulation device. Equipped with explosion-proof doors, and the entry system should have a dual verification, biometric recognition and mechanical lock. In short, within 1 month, it must be rebuilt into an impact-resistant house with a life support system. The guy was shocked, wondering if his client is an apocalypse delusionist who'd watched too many sci-fi movies. Chun Xiao pressures him, reminding him that his resume stated that he was a defense master who'd designed bunkers for top billionaires. In the moment, the engineer then thinks he'd found another rich guy who's been brainwashed by doomsday theories. Chun Xiao then shows his phone and offers a 1 million deposit, telling the man to name his price. The guy was ecstatic, thinking he's found a rich idiot. He believed this single job will set him up for life. Chun Xiao warns him that the quality of the materials will be inspected, and the man promises to build everything solid as a rock. But in that moment, they were both thinking different things. The engineer plans to rip him off, and Chun Xiao knows the guy won't be around to collect the rest of the payment. With the fortress underway, Chun Xiao thinks about the next step, like stocking up on supplies, medicine, and food. He knows that in the apocalypse, the most dangerous thing was other people, and firearms are hard to come by. With that in mind, he walks down the street while scrolling through his phone, looking for a solution. He finds a contact that promises a secure source and honest dealings for illegal goods. So he asks how to buy and gets an address with a meeting time set for 8 p.m. Arriving at the location, Chun Xiao finds it odd that the seller chose such a busy place. Suddenly, a woman runs right past him while being chased by 3 angry men. There's panic all over her face as she tries to escape down the dark street. The aggressors catch up to her and accuse her of trying to pull a fast one on their turf. In desperation, the woman grabs onto Chun Xiao's arm and begs for help. Chun Xiao was shocked to recognize her as Liu and wonders what she's doing there. He watched the situation in astonishment as the 3 caught up and forcefully grab her by the hair. Liu cried and begged for help. But still in a daze, Chun Xiao looked at her closely to confirm her identity, remembering his middle school days when Liu was the genius goddess looked up to by countless boys as a radiant light. Snapping back to reality, Chun Xiao briefly closes his eyes at the sight of the guy still violently pulling Liu's hair, demanding she hand over the money if she wishes to be released. One of the guys intervened with a malicious smile, suggesting they make her pay with her body if she didn't have the money. In that moment, Chun Xiao, who couldn't remain silent anymore, intervened with a sharp look and demanded they let her go. But upon hearing this, the men turned towards him with disdain. Then one of them charged forward with the intention of teaching him not to meddle in what clearly didn't concern him. But Chun Xiao dodged the attack with unexpected ease and agility. He grabbed the attacker's hand and twisted it with force that made him scream in pain. Then, with a lightning-fast movement, he knocked him to the ground with a powerful punch. At that moment, a system window announced the detection of intense negative emotions of fear, pain, and anger. Chun Xiao stood amidst an aura of energy, surprised by the activation of the negative emotion harvesting system, something he didn't possess in his previous life. The situation didn't give him time to think as the guy forcefully tore off a piece of Liu's clothes, before threatening to kill her if Chun Xiao moved a single step. But another person suddenly intervened, throwing a brick with amazing speed and accuracy which hit the guy squarely in the face, nearly knocking him out. The other 2 were stunned for a moment, but after mocking them as trash, this person, Mutsong, also scolded them for bullying a defenseless girl. The men flew into a rage and rushed towards them with weapons in hand, screaming with the intent to kill. But the 2 faced them without any ounce of hesitation, countering their attacks with ease. While Mutsong managed to take down the guy with the bat, Chun Xiao focused his gaze sharply on the other before he was dealt with a powerful kick that literally knocked the air out of the guy. He then switched to a punch straight to the face, whereas Mutsong delivers a devastating kick of his own to send the other flying, then followed it up with a stump to the stomach. In less than no time, Chun Xiao and Mutsong stood over the bodies of the aggressors who had been beaten shitless. Chun Xiao gave them a cold look and ordered them to scram. The 3 immediately fled screaming in terror as the system also announced gaining a point each in fear, panic, pain, despair, and humiliation. This negative emotion harvest points reached 10 for the first time, unlocking an expansion for his spatial storage. Chun Xiao smiled to himself, realizing that the idea of harvesting negative emotions from others was truly interesting. As he reached over to help Liu, she thanked him for saving her even though she was a bit taken aback of running into him. Out of concern, Chun Xiao asked if she was hurt, then gave her a shirt to use to cover herself. He advised her to be careful before seeing her off. Meanwhile, the moment Liu Yu left, Mutsong mocked how awful Chun Xiao's heroic feat of saving the beauty was. He then introduced himself and asked for Chun Xiao's. Realizing that Mutsong was the person he came to meet, Chun Xiao skipped the pleasantries and demanded they do the exchange. Mutsong was surprised that Chun Xiao was the buyer, considering the coincidence that brought them together as a stroke of fate. Mutsong tried to use a strange secret code for introductions, but Chun Xiao just stared at him coldly and straight up calls him a fool. The system immediately detected emotions of astonishment and confusion from Mutsong before Chun Xiao rectified the situation with a loud laugh, claiming it was just a joke to lighten the mood. Then he stated the password they had agreed upon. Mutsong believed it and invited Chun Xiao to follow him enthusiastically. They arrived at an isolated house, where Mutsong displayed a box containing a Russian-made pistol, praising its durability and power, while warning at the same time about the scarcity of ammunition and the need to use it wisely. Chun Xiao inspected the weapon like a pro, impressing Mutsong, who considered him as a real expert. Mutsong decides to give him a special friendship price. He also noticed that all of Chun Xiao's actions indicated he was a person with experience in this field. Chun Xiao exploited the situation intelligently, and with a cunning look, he began demanding a silencer, a warranty card, and an extra box of ammunition as a free gift. Mutsong was shocked by these requests, thinking to himself in astonishment that he was already giving him a friendship price. Mutsong flew into a rage, explaining that this was a black market where goods were sold at double the price, not a home appliance store to ask for warranties and gifts. With Mutsong's increasing negative emotion points, Chun Xiao decided to end the act and paid the money immediately. Inwardly, he was satisfied to have finally obtained everything he needed. Now there was only one thing left. The scene shifted to a luxury hotel under the moonlight, where Lu Wanqing was waiting impatiently for Chun Xiao. When he finally arrived acting all affectionate and caring, Lu Wanqing couldn't help asking what took him so long. Her legs were getting sore just standing. Then, in a coquettish tone, she asked Chun Xiao if he was sure his plan was risk-free. Chun Xiao reassured her, explaining that it was just a formality. And besides, he wouldn't ever dream of scamming his most cherished treasure. Hearing this, Lu Wanqing was totally hooked. She grew confident, recalling how Chun Xiao had been practically worshipping the very ground she walked on. From nearly selling his own blood just to buy her a handbag to wanting to sell his inheritance for a dowry. Lu Wanqing was absolutely certain Chun Xiao wouldn't have the guts to cross her. In the loan office, Zhang Yang praised Lu Wanqing's beautiful signature while she signed as a guarantor. Inwardly, he thinks of how naive she believes her signature was just a formality. But the moment that ink dries, the debt would fall on her head and she wouldn't be able to pay it back. Zhang Yang couldn't help just thinking of how Lu Wanqing would have no choice but to pay with her body. Meanwhile, the very moment Lu Wanqing finished signing the document, Chun Xiao thanked her inwardly, as her greed was what enabled him to pay the final installment for his safe house. Everything progressed smoothly after that before Chun Xiao returned to inspect his safe house. The engineer confirmed that the place had become a fortress with military standards, thermally insulated and resistant to explosions and even nuclear attacks. Chun Xiao paid the engineer generously and thanked him for the solid quality of work. In his safe house, while sitting on the sofa, breaking news blared about unprecedented solar activities and extreme heat waves that would hit the planet. The news warned of temperatures that would shatter records, while Chun Xiao polished his pistol with a white cloth. He directed his gaze towards the window with a sharp look full of determination, whispering to himself that the decisive moment had arrived. He walks to the window to look at the city. A massive burning solar flare dominates the sky, bathing the world in a terrifying fiery light as the catastrophe begins. On the television, a news anchor reports a massive solar flare has hit Earth. She warns of extreme global temperatures reaching 45 degrees Celsius and advises people to stay inside. The heat is immediate and oppressive. As sweat pours down his face, Chun Xiao grimly knows this is only the beginning. The entire city is scorched by a blinding light as the massive sun turns the metropolis into an oven. Civilians are already suffering. One woman splashes water on her face, trying to cool her burning skin. Drenched in sweat, she leans over her balcony, complaining that the weather is killing her and wondering how long it will last. On the street, a chubby shop owner in a floral shirt uses a megaphone. He tells frightened neighbors that temperatures will keep rising and warns of a supply shortage, urging them to buy his last batch of goods before rationing begins. The owner wipes sweat from his forehead. He isn't worried about the disaster. He just grins, thinking the heat wave is a perfect chance to make a fortune. A group of women approaches his stall, asking him to lower the high price of his watermelons. One of them crouches to inspect the fruit. The shop owner looks down at her with a lecherous expression, clearly more interested in her body than the sale. Leaning forward with a creepy smile, he tells the woman that if she buys 2 melons, he'll give her a discount and a free pack of tissues. He then suggests the women come to his house at night to enjoy his air conditioning. Looking uncomfortable, they quickly decline his offer. Undeterred, he leans uncomfortably close to the woman's face, pressuring her to buy now since there might be no food for sale tomorrow. However, his attitude shifts when 2 men ask for a lower price on water. He angrily points at them, shouting that he runs a small business and allows no bargaining. As the greedy boss carries away a box of supplies, he is unaware of Chun Xiao watching him from the shade with a cold, silent gaze. Chun Xiao stares coldly, his eyes narrowing as he recognizes the shop owner as Li Dafu. The encounter triggers a painful memory from his past life of a humiliating moment in this very store. He remembers Li Dafu shouting to a crowd, accusing a younger Chun Xiao of theft and claiming to have caught the poor kid red-handed. Li Dafu twists young Chun Xiao's arm. When the boy explains he only picked up a fallen item, Li Dafu mocks him, refusing to believe it and demanding payment. In his memory, the crowd of bystanders judges him, gossiping about his upbringing and assuming his silence is an admission of guilt. Overwhelmed and terrified, young Chun Xiao weeps and stutters that he didn't steal, but no one believes him. Now Chun Xiao stands stoically in the shop, the room's silence a stark contrast to his noisy memories. He notices a price tag on a shelf. A simple pack of onion potato chips costs an outrageous 50 yuan, marked as a manager recommendation. Chun Xiao picks up the bag and sarcastically asks Li Dafu if the chips are made of gold or prevent heat stroke for such a high price. Sweating profusely, Li Dafu turns around with an annoyed look. Chun Xiao's system activates, notifying him he has harvested disdain of 3 points from the shop owner. Losing patience, Li Dafu snatches the chips from Chun Xiao, yelling at him to get lost if he can't afford them. The system chimes, detecting 6 points of irritation. Unfazed, Chun Xiao smirks. He leans in, taunting the boss about hoarding treasures, and ominously warns him to watch out for thieves. Li Dafu stops, confused by the threat. Li Dafu explodes with rage, pointing at Chun Xiao. He demands to know who he is cursing and threatens him, asking if the heat has driven him insane. However, Chun Xiao remains calm. He asks if Li Dafu has recently suffered from insomnia, night sweats, and weak knees. Caught off guard, Li Dafu's anger fades, and he admits that he has. Li Dafu grows anxious, wondering aloud if bad feng shui in his warehouse is causing his problems. Chun Xiao leans in close and grabs the shopkeeper's face. He gravely declares that Li Dafu's yin tang is dark, a terrible omen. Suddenly, Chun Xiao viciously slaps Li Dafu across the face, sending the man spinning with unfocused eyes. Chun Xiao rubs his chin, diagnosing the man with a deficiency. Enraged, Li Dafu recovers and tries to kick Chun Xiao, screaming that his whole family has a deficiency. Chun Xiao easily evades the attack. While Li Dafu fumes, Chun Xiao casually grabs a lollipop and mockingly advises him to watch his health, warning that anger is harmful. As he leaves, Chun Xiao tosses a coin, coldly predicting Li Dafu might die young if he isn't careful. Li Dafu is left trembling with rage. The coin hits the floor with a metallic clink. Immediately, the system glows red, notifying Chun Xiao that he has harvested a huge amount of negative emotion. Anger plus 20, from the furious shopkeeper. Several hours later, a black cat runs past the dark supermarket entrance. Chun Xiao stands before the glass doors, reflecting on his past life. He remembers swallowing his anger when bullied and vows that in this life, he will get everything back with interest. A sinister look crosses his face as he checks his system. The emotions harvested from Li Dafu are just enough for a spatial expansion of his storage. Chun Xiao acts immediately. Using the harvested negative emotions, he upgrades his ability, expanding his spatial storage by another 200 cubic meters. He raises his hand, and a swirling black void manifests in his palm, ready to devour everything in its path. A confident smile plays on his lips as he prepares his revenge. The next day, birds chirp peacefully outside the shop. Still recovering from their confrontation, Li Dafu walks toward his store, unaware of what awaits him. Nearby, Chun Xiao watches from the bushes. Suddenly, Li Dafu freezes, his jaw dropping as he looks through his supermarket's glass doors. He stumbles inside and stands paralyzed in the middle of the room. The reality hits him. The shelves, once stocked with overpriced goods, are now completely empty. Every item has vanished, leaving the metal racks bare. Li Dafu's face darkens with rage. His mind races, wondering where his goods have gone. Unable to contain his fury, he grabs his head and screams, demanding to know who robbed him. In his safe house, Chen Xiao watches a live video of Li Dafu's breakdown. The system notifies him that Li Dafu's suffering has generated 66 negative emotion points. Chen Xiao calmly sips a cold soda. He smiles with satisfaction as he watches his enemy suffer, enjoying his petty but satisfying revenge. Back at the store, the chubby bastard continues to scream for the thief to show up and return his stock. In a fit of rage, he kneels onto the empty floor, completely out of control as he cries bitterly. The crowd outside gossips, thinking he's just faking it to raise his prices. Two women then comment that they heard rumors about a mysterious shadow the night before. Upon hearing this, Li Dafu panics, and the system collects all his fear and suspicion. In the middle of the crowd, Chen Xiao eats a chip and thinks the emotion farming is going great. He savors a potato chip with a victorious smile on his face, enjoying his revenge. His eyes glow red as he decides to add a little more fuel to the fire. So he walks past the vendor on the floor, loudly munching on the chips on purpose. The product's packaging is the same as the one that was stolen, making everything even more suspicious. Faced with this, Li Dafu recognizes the packaging instantly and yells that the product is his. Chen Xiao then repeats the same taunt from before about the absurd price of the chips. With a smirk, he reminds the vendor that hoarding too many treasures can end up attracting thieves. Li Dafu loses his patience and grabs Chen Xiao, accusing him of stealing his entire stock. Chen Xiao remains calm and faces the merchant's fury. While being held by the chubby bastard, Chen Xiao asks if he has any proof for the accusation. He even warns that making accusations without proof can lead to serious consequences. Chen Xiao mocks him, saying the store is sparkling clean and offers him the rest of the chips. Li Dafu's rage explodes, and the system collects another 18 negative emotion points. Chen Xiao then plays to the crowd, saying that other stores sell the same chips too. The crowd starts to have doubts, and the vendor wonders how the kid got so bold all of a sudden. He proposes a bet if they don't find anything stolen. He gets to keep Li Dafu's generator. The merchant accepts instantly, wanting to see just how far Chen Xiao's audacity goes. As Li Dafu leads everyone to Chen Xiao's house, the cunning young man was already daydreaming about the generator. But when they arrive, everyone is shocked by the luxurious building where the young man lives. Dumbfounded by so much luxury, Li Dafu wonders how Chen Xiao managed to get so rich. He then continues the search and finds a closet full of expensive and very chic clothes. The vendor opens the fridge and sees it's packed with cakes and seafood. His search leads him to a safe, where he finds a stack of gold bars and is left in shock. Now exhausted, Li Dafu hasn't found anything, and Chen Xiao provokes him, asking if he wants to tear up the floorboards. Embarrassed, Li Dafu tries to leave, but Chen Xiao stops him, and the system collects his shame. With that, Chen Xiao grabs him by the shirt and reminds him about the bet they made over the generator. In front of everyone, Chen Xiao pressures the merchant to honor their agreement. Li Dafu tries to back out, but Chen Xiao reminds him of the false accusation, and the system detects impatience. Because of this, the crowd starts to criticize the chubby vendor for not keeping his word and being dishonest. Furious with the situation, Li Dafu tries to punch Chen Xiao, but the attack was utterly useless. Chen Xiao catches the attacker's hand in midair with a strength that makes him wince in pain. From there, he twists Li Dafu's arm, throwing him to the ground as he screams in agony. Then, the system chimed in with 70 points after detecting negative emotion of pain. Faced with this unbearable pain, Li Dafu finally gives in and agrees to move the generator now. Chen Xiao then tells him to be quick about it, thinking that without the generator, he's gonna suffer big time in the future. The system detects all the fatty vendor's humiliation of 30 points, pain of 86 points, and fear of 101 points. Chen Xiao was smiling with satisfaction when suddenly, his cell phone starts to ring, and the name Lu Wangqing appears on the screen. On the other end of the line, Lu Wangqing complains that some debt collectors have been following her for the past 2 days. She asks why she's being followed, and Chen Xiao listens to everything with a cold expression. On the phone, Lu Wangqing yells, demanding to know why the Dahal gang is after her now. Chen Xiao plays innocent and says his heart breaks at her distrust. Inside, he's smiling with satisfaction, as the gang was much faster than he expected. With complete calm, he asks if the guys already know where she lives, or if they've said anything to her. Lu Wangqing replies that she managed to lose them, but keeps insisting on knowing the whole truth. Chen Xiao reassures her, telling her not to overthink it, as it could all be just a misunderstanding. He then takes a seat to enjoy a very luxurious meal. And on the other end of the line, Lu Wangqing is completely shocked by what she's seeing on her screen. He shows her a plate of grilled salmon, just to provoke her a little more. She can't believe it and asks how he can still get food of that quality. Casually holding a can of soda, Chun Xiao says he has plenty more of that in his stash. Lu Wangqing is stunned and asks if he really has a huge stash of food saved up. She thinks that with the heat, supplies are scarce and wonders how he got so rich. Chun Xiao taunts her, saying it's great to eat something like this when the weather is hot. He then savors a piece of salmon right in front of the camera to make her even more envious. Lu Wangqing was still in shock and can hardly believe Chun Xiao was eating real salmon. Because of this, her desire grows and she screams in desperation that she really wants some too. With a wicked look, he cynically asks if she has enough to eat over there. At that point, Lu Wangqing switches tactics and says she's very scared to keep living alone. She keeps up the act and says she feels like the dead collectors are still nearby. And so she offers herself up, asking if she can stay at Chun Xiao's place for a few days to feel safe. With a seductive voice, she starts to imply that she can return the favor in some way. Lu Wangqing then expressed her desire to keep him company if he shelters her. Chun Xiao smiles victoriously. His plan had worked, and the bitch fell for the trap, hook, line and sinker. He teases her, reminding her that she never let him visit, but is now willing to send the address for him to pick her up. Lu Wangqing says the situation is different now and sends her address because he's her protector. With a triumphant smile, he tells her to wait at home and not to wander around to avoid trouble. Lu Wangqing, on the other hand, underestimates him, thinking he's just another fool who fell for her charms. Chun Xiao hangs up the phone, thinking how arrogant she used to be, and now she's selling herself out for food. With a cold look, he's already planning the next steps of his revenge against the gold-digging bitch. Suddenly, the doorbell rings and an old woman with a child was at the door, calling for him. Chun Xiao goes to the door and looks through the peephole to see who's on the other side. Upon opening it, he greets Auntie Wang and asks calmly what she wants. This old neighbor says her air conditioner broke and asks to stay at his place because of the heat. Chun Xiao reminds her that she called him a beggar and had the security guards throw him out in the past. A memory then shows the woman and her husband mercilessly humiliating a young Chun Xiao and his mother. Back in the present, Auntie Wang tries to justify herself, saying that was all a long time ago. She gets furious and accuses him of being inhuman, but he scoffs that at least he has air conditioning. With that, Chun Xiao slams the door in her face without any hesitation. The woman curses him out and the system detects her anger, collecting 38 negative emotion points. From inside, Chun Xiao just smiles, satisfied to have gotten revenge on one more person. After that, Chun Xiao swaps the SIM card in his phone with a new one. And with the new number, he prepares to put the next part of his plan into action. He then makes an anonymous call directly to the members of the dangerous Dahal gang. He informs them that he knows Lu Wangqing's address and that she lives alone, making her an easy target. With everything set up, he just waits for things to unfold. Shortly after, Chun Xiao goes to the balcony and observes the city, thinking about Lu Wangqing's fate. With a satisfied demeanor, he thought to himself that the show is about to begin. Night falls over the city of Luocheng and an air of tension spreads. Meanwhile, that very night, Lu Wangqing admires herself in the mirror, confident that she will soon move into the comfort of Chun Xiao's air-conditioned fortress. Sitting on the edge of her bed, she gets lost in arrogant fantasies. She envisions Chun Xiao kneeling to serve her, convinced that a carefree life of luxury is the only thing worthy of her status. Completely relaxed, she lies back and lights a cigarette, waiting for Chun Xiao. Suddenly, she hears knocking at the door, and assuming her loyal dog has arrived, she rushes over with a fake smile. She opens the door and immediately mocks the visitor for being so eager to please her. However, her smile instantly vanishes, replaced by pure shock and horror. Instead of Chun Xiao, she sees the mob boss, Zhang Yang, and his men. Terrified, she stammers, asking how they found her. Zhang Yang ruthlessly slaps her across the face, reminding her that the money owed to the Dihai gang is due today. Lu Wangqing falls to the floor in panic. She screams that Chun Xiao borrowed the money and tricked her into signing the papers, begging them to find him instead. Uninterested in her excuses, Zhang Yang holds up the contract. He shouts that since she signed it, she is responsible for the debt. Zhang Yang orders his men to search the apartment and take every valuable item they can find. As thugs haul away furniture, a desperate Lu Wangqing screams at them to stop. She insists she is calling Chun Xiao and that he will be there soon to pay. However, Zhang Yang sits casually on her sofa, gathering her luxury handbags and jewelry on the table. Lu Wangqing stands before him, terrified, as he inspects her possessions. Zhang Yang holds up a handbag with disdain, remarking that these scraps aren't even enough to cover the interest on her debt. With a greedy grin, he reminds her that his men didn't travel in this heat just to leave empty-handed. He stands up, casting a large shadow over her. Lu Wanqing backs away in fear, begging him not to come closer and insisting the money is with Chen Xiao. Zhang Yang maintains a cruel smile, enjoying the situation. Panicking, Lu Wanqing tries to bargain by revealing Chen Xiao has a stockpile of supplies. She urges them to wait as he is coming to pick her up soon. She dials Chen Xiao's number, but an automated voice says it is unavailable. Sweat runs down her face as she listens to the recording. She stares at her phone screen, watching the call go unanswered. Her face pales as she realizes the truth. She stammers that no one is answering, completely losing her composure. A look of pure panic fills her eyes, wondering how this could happen. Desperate to keep the gang at bay, she forces a trembling smile. She tries to convince them that he is just busy and promises to call him back immediately. Zhang Yang loses patience and reveals the cruel truth. She is stupid for not realizing Chen Xiao tricked her into signing the debt so he could escape. Lu Wanqing stands frozen, pale with shock as she realizes she has been completely betrayed. Zhang Yang suddenly grabs her ruthlessly by the hair. Screaming in pain, Lu Wanqing tries to save herself, shouting that he needs to find Chen Xiao because he has the valuable supplies. Ignoring her screams, Zhang Yang drags her across the room towards the bedroom. The bedroom door slams shut with a heavy thud. On the floor outside, Lu Wanqing's shattered phone lies abandoned as her screams grew louder. Meanwhile, Chen Xiao sits comfortably in his fortified, air-conditioned safe house. Holding a glass of wine, he thinks about Lu Wanqing, satisfied that she is finally experiencing the misery he arranged for her. Outside, the city is dark, but his apartment remains a lone beacon of light and safety. Back in Lu Wanqing's apartment, the deed was done. Zhang Yang sits on the edge of the bed with his back turned, shirtless. Lu Wanqing is curled up on the bed, sobbing. Zhang Yang grabs a cup of coffee, interested by Lu Wanqing's desperate pleas. He leans in, forcing her to look at him, and demands she repeat exactly what supplies Chen Xiao has. Gasping as he grips her throat, Lu Wanqing frantically lists Chen Xiao's luxuries: air conditioning, ice drinks, and piles of food. She cries that he has everything. She emphasizes the amount of supplies, hoping this information will spare her further pain. Zhang Yang's eyes narrow with curiosity. He looks down at her. He tells her that although she has nothing left, she has pointed him toward the right target. Satisfied, Zhang Yang tosses her onto the bed. He realizes he has found a big fish, and that targeting Chen Xiao is the new priority. He stands over the sobbing woman with a greedy smile, planning how to take Chen Xiao's fortress. He orders his gang to leave, ready to move on to their next target. The door closes, leaving the apartment silent and destroyed. Alone in the dark, Lu Wanqing curls up, covered in bruises. Her tears turn to pure hatred. Shaking with fury, she curses Chen Xiao, vowing he will die a horrible death for tricking her. Outside, the city lights flickered one after another as the temperature still remained unbearably high. And beneath this suffocating heat, the Dihai gang were silently approaching Chen Xiao's safe house. Led by the old hag Auntie Wang, this mob was now certain that Chen Xiao had plenty of food and drinks, with a 24/7 AC. She also added that Chen Xiao was extremely stingy, and hadn't even shared a single food or sip of water with his neighbors. Due to how well the old hag had helped the Dihai gang in finding Chen Xiao's apartment complex, the mob boss promised her plenty of benefits once they were done with the raid. Auntie Wang was quick to thank Brother Zhang for his generosity, stating in a fawning gesture that it was no wonder he was a big boss. Inwardly, she was already picturing Chen Xiao on his knees, crying and begging the Dihai gang to spare his life, while promising to do whatever Auntie Wang wanted. A sly grin spread across her face as she genuinely believed it was a done deal, and she was only there to see just how arrogant Chen Xiao can be this time around. With just a road crosswalk distance between the mob and Chen Xiao's apartment complex, Brother Zhang suddenly had a thought and suspected Chen Xiao to be up to no good. He instructed 2 of his men to take the lead. So, with this order, the blonde of the 2 guys charged in with his wooden bat, intending on kicking the door down. But the very moment he crossed the road and stepped onto the apartment's land, he was zapped with a high-voltage electricity. Brother Zhang's intuition proved to be spot-on as the guy suddenly dropped his wooden bat after tensing up abruptly. Unaware as to why the blonde suddenly cramped up and dropped to the ground, 2 guys rushed in to help. But the very moment they grabbed hold of him, they too also got hit with the shock and began to spasm. The electrocution persisted as they wailed and cried for help, their bodies gradually beginning to char. This sent the rest into a state of utter disbelief and total confusion, especially Auntie Wang. She couldn't comprehend when Chen Xiao had installed such fatal countermeasures. Brother Zhang, on the other hand, couldn't even think of what to do next. Then, to their bewilderment, the PA system on top of the apartment complex was suddenly turned on. And as they average a dumbfounded negative emotion of 3 points, Chen Xiao began singing through the PA system, enjoying the agony of the 3 guys who were still being electrocuted. It was then that the rest finally saw the visible sparks of electricity on the ground ahead. Right on cue, the system began harvesting their negative emotions of shock, panic, and speechlessness, totaling them at 103 points. Inside, Chen Xiao watched everything through his live footage, and even teased them for not having the shittiest luck like the 3 guys. But if they're still not convinced, they can just step a foot onto the protective electric grid. Brother Zhang yells for Chen Xiao to cut the crap and pay back the debts he owes. It was a matter of principle, so if he returns the money, they can call it even and depart on good terms. Auntie Wang also chimed in, pointing out that Chen Xiao had money to renovate, but is refusing to pay his debts. She then questioned if this was how Chen Xiao's parents raised him. Chen Xiao continued to watch with a smug look, before his expression suddenly turned dark, his tone cold as ice as he informed Brother Zhang that the 4 million market price of his apartment was more than enough to offset the 3.5 million loan. And since Brother Zhang had the deed, his debts was settled. As for Lu Wanqing's debt, it had nothing to do with him, so he should go find her. Sweating bullets, an enraged Brother Zhang cursed, knowing full well that supplies were now paramount for survival. Everything else, including debts, was meaningless and offer absolutely no value. Chen Xiao casually munched on his ice cream bar and calmly offered Brother Zhang a piece of advice. He stated that a wise man submits to circumstances, and while he was in a good mood, it was in their best interest that they part on good terms. Otherwise, if they keep looking for trouble, he won't be lenient anymore. Chen Xiao then pressed on a red button on his desk, and almost immediately, the 3 guys in the protective electric grid got hit with an even more powerful voltage. They wailed and begged their boss for help. They can't hold on anymore, and hope he quit antagonizing Chen Xiao. In that moment, their pain and despair reached an astonishing 140 points. And on the other hand, Brother Zhang and the rest of his men were instantly overwhelmed with an intense sense of dread, their fear palpable on their faces. Brother Zhang was the first to make a run for it, his anger harvested at 78 points. And as the rest of his men helped their 3 brothers, Brother Zhang warned Chen Xiao to just wait because the Dihai gang won't let him off. Meanwhile, as Auntie Wang was left behind, the old hag was caught between following their lead or try begging Chen Xiao for mercy. In that moment, she felt like a tiny prey in the sight of a ferocious beast. The very next morning, everyone was locked inside their home as the temperature reached 52 degrees Celsius. And as they suffer silently under such unbearable heat, Chen Xiao was happily enjoying a meal. On the television, a news anchor reports the recent cases of death from heatstroke appearing in many areas of the city. So citizens were now advised to avoid going out as much as possible. Chen Xiao noticed the excessive buzzing of his phone and checked the homeowners group chat. There, he saw that Li Dafu and Auntie Wang were soiling his name. They call him selfish, questioning if he was even human. Obviously, he was unfit to be a neighbor. He clearly has supplies but refuses to share just a little. Chen Xiao seemed to enjoy watching the elderly and children die from the heat and hunger. The moment these comments were posted, the flying monkeys also chimed in, trying to morally blackmail Chen Xiao into sharing his supplies. Casually taking a sip of water, Chen Xiao mindlessly scrolled through the messages in the group chat. At the same time, the negative emotion from them also kept pouring in. Jealousy was at 99 points, and anger was at 101 points, tallying his negative emotional value above 1,000 points. With this achievement, the system immediately started calculating suitable rewards. Inside his climate-controlled Safehouse, Chen Xiao stands before his open refrigerator, stocked with fresh food and drinks. To taunt his suffering neighbors, he smirks and takes a photo of his supplies. He posts the picture to the group chat, joking that his stockpile is large and asking who wants some. The neighbors bite the bait. Residents beg for a share. Auntie Wang shamelessly asks for delivery due to her bad legs, and others arrogantly demand water. Chen Xiao's expression turns cold. He replies that he isn't running a charity for freeloaders and will only accept trades of equal value. The neighbors' begging instantly turns to fury. In the chat, Auntie Wang and others insult him, calling him selfish and cursing him with karma. Having harvested enough negative emotions, Chen Xiao leans back on his sofa with a fresh apple. Suddenly, a system notification gets his attention. The system announces his negative emotion value has reached 3,000, unlocking spatial cut, a new skill that creates a microscopic rift within 3 meters. Intrigued, Chen Xiao activates the skill. He focuses on the apple on the table. With a swift hand wave, he unleashes the invisible blade, slicing the apple perfectly in half. Chen Xiao smiles, a dangerous glint in his eyes, thinking his survival game just got more interesting. That night, an orange off-road vehicle stops suddenly on a deserted city street. A woman in red high heels steps out. It is Lu Wanking in a black evening gown, looking arrogant and ready for revenge. Suited bodyguards stand by the open jeep door where mob boss Zhang Yang sits, exhaling smoke. He looks intense as he lights a cigar, preparing for the raid. On the street, Zhang Yang asks his subordinates to confirm if this is Chun Zhao's location. His men confirm the target is in the complex's innermost building. To show his ownership, Zhang Yang gropes Lu Wanking's backside. He holds her close and teases her, asking if she'll feel heartache seeing her former lover raided. Lu Wanking plays the devoted mistress, leaning into him seductively and claiming her heart now belongs only to him. She speaks of Chun Xiao with pure disdain, calling him a useless piece of trash. However, her face twists with fury as she declares that tonight, Chun Xiao will die. Their conversation is interrupted when Zhang Yang spots someone approaching from the residential area. It's Li Defu, the supermarket owner, and a neighbor. Driven by greed, they run to the gang, offering to help block Chun Xiao's escape in hopes of getting on their good side. Zhang Yang looks at the desperate neighbors and makes a deal. If they help capture Chun Xiao, he will share a portion of the supplies with them. Li Defu, thinking he's safe, eagerly leads the gang, calling the mob boss Big Brother and promising a shortcut. Meanwhile, other neighbors are looting supplies on the street, unaware of the approaching danger. The gang, led by Zhang Yang and Lu Wanking, follows Li Defu as he explains the complex's layout. However, when Li Defu points to his own home to show solidarity, a red-headed thug coldly says the entire building now belongs to them. Panic sets in. The gang is surrounded by an anti-Wang and a neighbor scream, realizing the gang plans to take everything, even from those who helped. The mob shows no mercy, beating the neighbors down. Lying in the dirt, they regret their greedy mistake of trusting these beasts. With the neighbors subdued, Zhang Yang, Lu Wanking, and their armed thugs prepare to move on to their main target. They gather at the base of Chun Zhao's building, looking up at its high walls. Suddenly, a massive armchair hurtles down, crashing on the pavement in front of the startled gang. Unconcerned by the army at his doorstep, sitting in the armchair, he looks down at the mob and asks with a smirk if they're all looking for him. Zhang Yang hugs Lu Wanking and yells up, threatening death and demanding supplies in exchange for leaving Chun Zhao's corpse intact. Chun Xiao ignores the threat, simply wiping his mouth with a napkin. His eyes glow with a menacing red light as he glares down, scolding the mob boss for rudely disturbing his meal. Zhang Yang's eyes widen, shocked by his prey's arrogance. Furious, Zhang Yang points at the building and screams for his men to cripple Chun Xiao. The confrontation becomes a street brawl. Chun Xiao weaves through the gang, easily dodging a punch. Focused, he charges into the group, grabs a thug by the head, and ruthlessly smashes him into the ground. A muscular, mohawked thug leaps into the air, swinging a spiked flail. Chan Xiao anticipates the attack, sidesteps as the weapon hits the pavement, and counters with a powerful kick to the thug's jaw. Seeing his comrades fall, another gang member unsheathes an axe. He lunges with a deadly swing, but Chun Xiao remains calm, activating his spatial segmentation skill to intercept the blade. Suddenly, the fight is interrupted as a yellow canister lands right next to Zhang Yang and Lu Wanking. It detonates instantly, filling the street with a massive cloud of white smoke. Coughing, Zhang Yang realizes it's tear gas. Fearing a trap from a hidden accomplice, he orders his gang to retreat immediately. Inside the thick smoke, Chun Xiao casually dodges a final blind swing from a thug's axe. He spots a figure leaning against a building. The stranger comments on the trouble Chun Xiao caused, but admits his fighting skills are impressive. Chun Xiao glares at the man suspiciously, demanding to know why he's there. The figure steps forward, revealing he is Mu Chong, the arms dealer in the floral shirt. Tossing a gas canister, he asks if Chun Xiao is still interested in guns, claiming he has good merchandise. Mu Chong stares enviously at Chun Xiao's cooler box, amazed he has ice water in this heat. Chun Xiao gives him a bottle of water, but asks why he's so far from his own territory. Mu Chong explains that a rival, Lu Haifeng, has been stealing his business, and he was tracking his men. He admits he followed the rival's men here and was surprised by Chun Zhao's large stockpile, assuming he has special supply channels. Hearing this, Chun Zhao's eyes narrow with alertness. He turns sharply, demanding what Mu Chong is implying. Mu Chong quickly reassures him, clarifying he wants to propose a partnership, not pry. He reveals Lu Haifeng has a massive stockpile of purified water. He suggests Chun Xiao extract it, they store it here, and Mu Chang will sell it. Chun Xiao contemplates the offer in the dark, knowing rising temperatures will make water more valuable than money. He agrees to cooperate, leaving Mu Chang in pure shock. Chun Xiao demands a 9-to-1 profit split. Outraged, Mu Chang shouts that it's robbery. The system notifies Chun Xiao he has harvested a strong emotion of shock. Unmoved, Chun Xiao turns to walk away, saying there's nothing to discuss if Mu Chang isn't willing. Desperate, Mu Chang abandons his dignity and clings to Chun Xiao's leg, begging for an 8-2 split so he can eat. With tears streaming down his face, Mu Chang realizes Chun Xiao can't be swayed and must have a powerful trump card. Satisfied with his dominance, Chun Xiao sips his drink and agrees to the 8-2 split. However, he adds a condition. He gets first pick of all future goods, and Mu Chang sells what's left. Resigned, Mu Chang sighs and agrees. Chun Xiao takes command, ordering Mu Chang to first scout the target's layout and personnel. Later, the two overlook a massive industrial complex. Mu Chang explains it's Lu Haifeng's stronghold, with the front used for trading resources. The place is heavily guarded by men with shotguns on patrol. Mu Chang reveals a darker side of the stronghold, pointing to women captured to provide special services for the leaders. A guardman handles one woman, Lu Wanqing, who is now a prisoner after her betrayal. She looks terrified and helpless in a red dress. Mu Chang points out the rear water storage area, but admits he hasn't found the exact tank. Chun Xiao outlines his plan. He'll scout alone, and on his signal, Mu Chang must create a diversion. Mu Chang doubts how he can move the water by himself. Ignoring the doubt, Chun Xiao leaps from their vantage point toward shipping containers patrolled by guards below. Now on the ground, Chun Xiao moves confidently through the facility, dressed in dark clothing. However, he is quickly noticed. A guard stops him, noting his unfamiliar face and demanding his ID. Chun Xiao calmly shows a card, claiming Boss Lu sent him to count the water stock. The guard isn't fooled. He laughs, points his shotgun at Chun Xiao's back, and mocks the childish trick. The system registers the guard's mockery, adding to Chun Xiao's points. Chun Xiao decides his spatial cut is for more than peeling fruit. With cold resolve, he rests a hand on the guard's shoulder. He suddenly swipes the ID card. Infused with his spatial power, the plastic turns razor-sharp, slicing through the guard's neck. The guard collapses instantly, not comprehending what happened. As blood sprays from the fatal wound, another guard witnesses the gruesome scene. Chun Xiao's system registers a surge of horror and pain from the victim. Overcome with shock, the guard pulls out a pistol and, screaming in panic, aims at his partner's killer. The guard opens fire, the muzzle flash illuminating the dark industrial site. But Chun Xiao moves with superhuman agility, easily evading the bullets. He retaliates with a long-range spatial slash. The guard keeps shooting but is no match for the invisible blade, which slices him in half mid-stride. The system notifies Chun Xiao he has harvested massive fear and despair points. Gunfire shatters the stronghold's silence. Reinforcements rush to the scene, including a guard with a rocket launcher. Outnumbered, Chun Xiao hides in the shadows against a concrete wall. He stays still as the frantic guards run past, not noticing him. While Chun Xiao hides, a pale hand suddenly emerges from the shadows behind him. He freezes, shocked to realize someone has found his hiding spot. Outside, the stronghold is in chaos. Guards swarm the area around the massive chemical tanks, hunting for the intruder. Armed silhouettes patrol past corrugated metal buildings, weapons raised as they hunt the killer. The figure in the shadows is Li Yuyu. She presses a finger to her lips, signaling him to be quiet. Crouched behind a shed, Chun Xiao asks why she is here. She sadly explains the gang captured her and assumes he was caught too. She looks disheveled and hopeless, kneeling on the ground. Chun Xiao asks if she knows where the water is. She nods, explaining her cleaning work let her learn the layout and offers to lead him. For a distraction, Li Yuyu hurls a metal bucket into the courtyard where it clatters loudly. The guards, including the one with the rocket launcher, turn toward the noise. Shouting they've found someone, they rush to the empty bucket. Seizing the opportunity, Li Yuyu leads Chun Xiao down a narrow alley, whispering that this route has no surveillance cameras. Li Yuyu leads Chun Xiao quickly through dirty, rat-infested back alleys to avoid detection. They stop at a large metal door, and Chun Xiao tells her to hide and wait for his return. Alone, he activates his spatial ability, summoning a black vortex in his hand. He focuses his energy, preparing to breach the wall. With a powerful surge, he punches the structure directly. The massive impact shatters the brick wall, sending debris flying as he enters. Inside, a patrolling guard is startled by the explosion. He stumbles back, looking around, confused, terrified and sweating. He clutches his weapon and screams, demanding to know who is there. Chen Xiao steps through the breach, his eyes glowing with a terrifying red as he glares at the guard. Without hesitating, he unleashes a deadly spatial slash. The instant, precise attack slices through the guard's neck before he can pull the trigger. As the guard dies, the system notifies Chen Xiao he has harvested massive shock, fear, and pain points. Hearing from her hiding spot, Li Yuyu begins to worry. She feels that Chen Xiao has been inside for a long time and wonders if something happened to him. She is feeling very anxious and just hopes that he is safe. But when she carefully looks inside, she is completely horrified. The place is full of destruction, and she can't believe what she is seeing. Everything has been wrecked. Suddenly, she notices a figure walking straight toward her out of the ruins. She panics, starts shouting, and gets ready to attack. Then she realizes it is just Chen Xiao. She calmly tells her that everything is handled and says they should leave now. He immediately turns around and starts walking away. Then he pulls out a gun, points it into the air, and fires a single shot. The bullet explodes high in the air. Li Yuyu is shocked by the noise, but Chun starts laughing because he knows exactly what he just did. Meanwhile, waiting outside, Mu Chong sees the signal in the sky and immediately understands. He remarks that Chen Xiao is actually pretty impressive and sounds genuinely surprised. He then begins his own part of the destruction plan. He throws several prepared fire bottles onto the ground, causing chaos and explosions all over the place. The entire area quickly bursts into flames. People start shouting about the fire and rush around desperately trying to put it out. Just as they planned, everyone is completely distracted by the chaos. With the fire spreading, Chen Xiao and Li Yuyu easily move deeper into the other areas. Li Yuyu points the way, explaining that the alley ahead will lead them to the outskirts of the south gate. As they keep moving forward, another woman suddenly rushes up from behind and calls out to Chen Xiao, begging him to take her with them. It is Lu Wangqing. Chen Xiao turns around and recognizes her immediately. She pleads with him again, saying they used to be lovers, and asks him to take her for the sake of their past relationship. She moves closer and promises that if he takes her away from this place, she won't even blame him for using her name to take out loans in the past. Chen Xiao responds coldly, telling her that she really doesn't understand the situation at all. In his cold tone, Lu Wangqing breaks down and starts crying. She sobs that the gang forces her to work every day, making her service old men. She explains that if she resists, they beat her, and if she tries to run away, they catch her and drag her back. She cries that she has nowhere else to go and begs Chun to let her live with him, promising she will do absolutely anything he wants. Chen Xiao looks at her and reminds her of everything she did. He asks if she ever thought about this day when she laughed at him for being poor, called him a simp, slept with old men behind his back, and even led Lu Haifeng to try and kill him. After hearing this, Lu Wangqing becomes truly terrified. In that moment, she finally realizes that the things she has done are completely unforgivable. Chen thinks even deeper. He recalls his past life and wonders. When she dismembered him back then, did she ever imagine a day like this would come? She did too many horrific things to him, and there is no way he can forgive her, no matter what she says now. He forces himself to keep his emotions under control because he cannot allow history to repeat itself. Chun coldly pushes her aside and tells her that her acting is still just as bad as ever. He then turns to Lu Yu and says they should keep going. Lu Yu glances at Lu Wangqing lying on the ground and silently hopes she learns a lesson from this, and never becomes a person like her. At that moment, Lu Wangqing suddenly snaps. She screams that if Chun won't let her live, then she won't let anyone have it easy either. Immediately, a system notification pops up. Detected intense negative emotion, hatred, pullings 999. The number goes completely off the charts. Not long after they leave, the boss of the area arrives. The first thing he asks is about the water, shouting to know if his supply is safe since it is the most valuable thing he has. When his men open the door and see the damage inside, their hearts sink. There is nothing left at all. Then they notice words written on the wall. It clearly says that Boss Lu's water has been taken and next time, his life will be taken instead. Lu completely loses his mind. He shouts furiously demanding to know who did this. He is beyond angry. At that moment, Lu Wangqing speaks up from the ground. She tells Boss Lu that it was Chen Xiao. She lies and claims she tried to stop him, but Chun injured her and insulted Lu, calling him trash. She clings to Lu, deliberately manipulating him further by saying that Chun claimed Lu was unworthy of having such resources. She keeps adding fuel to the fire, warning him that Chun plans to take all of them down. Hearing this, Lu's anger completely explodes. He orders everyone to follow him to the south gate to slaughter Chen Xiao. A massive commotion spreads through the entire camp as the order is given to hunt them down. Up ahead, Chun and Mu Chong both notice the movement immediately. Mu Chong comments on it, clearly understanding that they are being chased. As the entire enemy force gathers behind their boss, Chun calmly mutters that Boss Lu moves faster than he expected. Still, he is already prepared. Lu points forward and screams the order to get him. Everyone behind him charges forward, their anger completely out of control. But this actually gives Chun the advantage. He stays calm and casually throws a torch onto the ground in front of them, instantly creating a huge wall of fire. The group is forced to stop, trapped behind the flames. The boss shouts through the fire that he will make sure Chun Xiao is finished. Right after that, a notification appears. Detected intense negative emotion. Hatred. Plows 9.99. Now, there are two people whose hatred toward Chun has reached the maximum level. Chun, however, stays relaxed. He sarcastically thanks Boss Lu, noting that he will gladly take these emotion points to become stronger and earn even more in the future. Then, another notification pops up. Ding. Negative emotion points reached 3,000. Unlock new skill, Spatial Barrier. Inside the cozy shelter, Chun Xiao is busy hosting a small celebration. Mu Zeng laughs loudly, saying that what happened earlier was absolutely awesome. He bets that old dog Lu is probably tearing his own place apart in rage right now. They sit around the table, enjoying a spread of insanely delicious dishes. They party without a care in the world, completely ignoring the deadly heat wave raging outside. The food looks so incredible that just seeing it would make anyone want to join in. It's the kind of feast you want to dig into immediately, but sadly, unless you are sitting right there, you can only imagine the taste. Seeing all of this, Lu Yu sincerely thanks Chun Xiao. She tells him that if he hadn't saved her, she doesn't know how much longer she would have been stuck in that hellhole. She is extremely grateful and feels ready to do anything to repay him. She even offers to handle the cooking, saying she knows how to make all kinds of food and just wants to make him happy since she knows guys usually love a good home-cooked meal. Chun smiles warmly and reminds her that they are old classmates, so there is no need to be so polite. He understands her gratitude, but more than anything, he wants her to relax, feel safe, and just take it easy while she is here. Lu Yu insists that she isn't just being polite. She explains that he made her feel like there are still people in this world worth trusting. Mu Chong then chimes in, adding that the whole hero saving the beauty move was pretty impressive too. He jokingly asks Chun to spill the details, wanting to know exactly how he managed to pull it off. He still can't believe Chun emptied an entire reservoir all by himself and wonders if he used some kind of crazy magic. For a brief moment, the room falls into silence. Chun simply replies that he has his ways. He tells Mu Chong that instead of worrying about the how, he should focus on figuring out how to safely sell that much water. Hearing this, Mu Chong freezes for a second, realizing Chun is right. Selling that amount of water without exposing where it came from won't be easy at all. Chun then casually asks Lu Yu about her life after junior high, mentioning that he never really heard any news about her after they graduated. Lu Yu hesitates for a moment, then explains that her family ran into serious trouble shortly after graduation. She adds that her parents went missing around the same time. As she speaks, the bad memories overwhelm her, and she starts to feel panic rising again. Still, she pushes through the fear, knowing that Chun deserves to know the truth. But just as she is speaking, flames suddenly begin to rise around the perimeter. They can't believe their eyes. Mu Chong looks out the window and blurts out that the whole place is on fire. The fire is completely out of control. It is obvious that the people who lost their water supply either want it back or want everything destroyed. As the flames erupt violently, Chen, Mu Chong, and Liu Yu all stare outside in shock. The fire is massive. Amidst the chaos, they can see people outside suffering in the heat. One person outside is holding a child, screaming desperately for help and begging someone to save the kids. Mu Chong suddenly realizes what is happening. He says Lu Haifeng must be behind this, and wonders if that bastard is really trying to burn everyone to death. Liu Yu anxiously asks if they should go out and do something. Chen, however, remains lost in thought. He realizes that Lu Haifeng is trying to use morality and innocent lives as a trap to bind him. He thinks it is pointless because he has long passed being the naive do-gooder from his past life, the one who got strangled to death just for trying to save everyone. Outside, Lu Haifeng shouts for Chun Xiao to come out. He threatens that if Chun doesn't show himself, he will burn the entire area to ashes just to see how long Chen's so-called iron turtle shell can last. One of Lu's underlings quickly flatters him, saying the boss is wise as always. He adds that if the fire keeps spreading, even if the people inside don't burn to death, the smoke will definitely finish them off. Lu enjoys the spectacle. As the fire grows bigger and bigger, his mood gets better and better. In his mind, He thinks that this is exactly what happens when someone dares to fight against him. The flames continue to rise higher, and nearby buildings start collapsing, which only fuels the fire even more. Inside the shelter, Mu Chang starts to panic. He says they can't just stay inside like this. He warns that the heat will conduct through the walls, and even if they don't burn, they'll either be roasted alive or suffocate from the lack of oxygen. Chun just smiles calmly. He already has a plan. He thinks to himself that in a high-temperature apocalypse, he would never be stupid enough to skip installing the highest-grade fire protection system in his safe house. He prepared for this exact scenario long ago. He even has random old PCs running the defense software, utilizing every piece of tech he has. Inside, he calmly presses a red button on his console. Normally, when someone presses a big red button, things are about to go very wrong. But this time, it is the opposite. Outside, hidden devices activate and immediately begin spraying fire control grenades. They work like massive fire extinguishers, releasing thick, suppressant smoke across the area. As the white smoke spreads, the flames rapidly die down. Mu Chang stands there in disbelief, completely stunned by the sight. He yells out, "Holy crap, it's nanograde aerogel." He can't believe Chun could get his hands on something like that. He says this stuff is straight up military grade and asks if Chun robbed an army base or something. Lu Yu is also completely stunned, watching the fire vanish before her eyes. As the fire starts dying down, the boss outside grows more and more frustrated. He snorts and claims this is just a desperate death struggle. However, he acts like he is prepared for this outcome too. Suddenly, one of the guys nearby tries to launch a sneak attack on Lu, thinking the boss is distracted. The guy swings his weapon with all his strength, but it is useless. The boss is far stronger. He takes the attacker down easily and orders everyone to keep attacking. He says he doesn't believe Chen's junk technology can last forever. He is ready to drag this out. The man beside him panics and stutters, telling the boss that their fuel is almost gone. He points out that the white mist from the house is way too effective. At that moment, Chen's voice echoes out from the shelter. He casually asks Boss Lu if he is done playing with fire and jokes, asking if he wants to come inside for a glass of ice water to cool off. Right after that taunt, a notification appears in front of Chun. Detected strong negative emotion, anger plus 888. The people standing around outside who were hoping to enjoy the fire show are now completely disappointed. With the flames dying down, there is nothing left to watch. Inside his head, the boss changes his mind. He decides that just killing Chen Xiao would be letting him off too easily. He realizes this house is fireproof, sturdy, and completely self-sufficient. In his eyes, it is the perfect shelter, and now he wants it for himself. Brute force didn't work. Fire attacks failed, so he decides there is no need to keep pretending anymore. He thinks that since it has come to this, no one should blame him for tearing away the last bit of civility he has left. As he looks toward the innocent civilians nearby, a look of pure fear spreads across their faces. Chun understands exactly what is about to happen, but he is already prepared for every possibility. With the fire burning nearby, Boss Lu shouts for Chun Xiao to get the hell out and look at all the people suffering because of him. The auntie immediately starts crying and screaming at Chun, calling him a damn little brat. She blames him for offending Boss Lu and dragging everyone down with him, demanding he come out. Meanwhile, another guy yells that Lu Haifeng is a bastard, declaring that if it really comes down to it, they will rush out and fight him to the death. Chun thinks to himself that using other people's lives to threaten him is the oldest trick in the book. Unfortunately, in this world, being soft-hearted is the same as committing suicide. Lu sneers, saying that if Chun wants to hide like a coward, that is fine. He will start with this old guy instead. He grabs an elderly man who is trembling and crying in fear. Suddenly, a voice shouts that Lu Haifeng will die a horrible death for doing this. Hearing that voice and seeing what is happening, Chun immediately recognizes the man as Grandpa Wang. He remembers how this old man once brought him water and told him to survive, saying that as long as he is alive, there is always hope. That memory finally sparks real anger in Chun. He turns and tells Mu Kong to stay inside and protect Yu, stating he is going to settle the score with Boss Lu. The others look at him in shock, but they also understand. As Chun walks out into the sea of flames, he calmly tells Lu Haifeng that their grievances are strictly between the two of them and have nothing to do with anyone else. Lu is still gripping the old man by the collar, a torch burning in his hand. Hearing Chen's words, he throws the old man aside and mocks Chun, saying he is finally willing to crawl out of his shell. He asks if Chun wants to play the hero. Then, he lays out his conditions: pay back the money, hand over the water, and give up his life. Only then might he consider letting the others go. Chun responds coldly that he has no interest in playing the hero. The two of them stare at each other intensely. Then Chun raises his hand and points forward. He says that fighting and killing are boring and only damage one's karma. He adds that he heard Lu started out running a casino, so why not settle this the way Lu knows best? He proposes a bet. If Lu wins, everything Chun owns will belong to him. But if Chun wins, Lu must release Grandpa Wang and get the hell out of this area. Boss Lu bursts out laughing and agrees right away. He throws a dice cup over and says they will bet on who rolls higher. 1 round to decide life or death. Chun quickly catches it and calmly says he is betting on big. He adds that a God of Gamblers showdown is about to begin. Both of them adjust their stances. For a moment, it feels like they are standing in a casino instead of a burning battlefield. They shout loudly as they begin shaking the dice. The dice device is switched on, and the dice inside starts spinning wildly. As the dice roll, everyone around starts cheering for their boss, shouting that Boss Lu will definitely win. Boss Lu looks extremely confident. When the dice stop, he bursts out laughing. He proudly announces 3 sixes, a supreme roll, and declares that Chun has lost. Chun stays calm and tells him not to rush, saying the winner hasn't been decided yet. He then secretly uses a trick to manipulate the dice. He cuts through the dice cleanly and casually remarks that Boss Lu's dice don't seem to be of very good quality. Everyone instantly panics when they see the dice split in half. Someone shouts that the total points add up to 21, which beats the so-called supreme roll. Chun declares that Boss Lu has lost and tells him to release the old man. Boss Lu is furious. He accuses Chun of cheating and immediately charges at him. A notification pops up. Strong negative emotion detected. Anger. Pull 500. As Boss Lu rushes forward with a knife, he curses Chun and screams for him to die. The people around panic and fear. Chen, however, stays composed. He thinks this is the perfect time to test his new skill. As Boss Lu lunges at him, Chun sidesteps effortlessly. He then hurls the dice device at high speed, terrifying Boss Lu. The device slams into the ground, kicking up smoke and debris. Everyone rushes over in panic, asking if the boss is okay as smoke fills the area. Boss Lu coughs and says he is fine. He orders 2 people to go find Chun. As the smoke clears, Boss Lu spots Chun ahead. He points at him and orders everyone to take him down. The goons immediately open fire, shooting wildly and shouting in excitement, eager to kill Chun. Boss Lu demands an update, but before anyone can respond, a sharp slash appears and takes down the goons standing right in front of him. Boss Lu is shocked. As the smoke finally settles, Chun is revealed standing there, completely unharmed. Boss Lu pulls out a huge rocket launcher, shouting that he doesn't care how strong Chun is. He claims there is no way to dodge this and tells Chun to die, firing the rocket immediately. As the rocket shoots forward, the boss shouts that everything Chun owns will be his. At that moment, a notification appears. Spatial barrier activated. A barrier instantly wraps around Chen's body, protecting him. The barrier takes the full impact of the explosion and blocks it completely. Boss Lu starts panicking. Sweat pours down his face as he wonders what is going on. He can't believe Chun blocked a missile. He starts to feel that this guy is simply unbeatable. Chun smirks and tells Boss Lu that losing in front of so many people must be tough. He asks if Lu plans to go back on the bet. As he speaks, Chun casually slices the missile apart with several cuts. Then he slowly starts walking forward. Seeing Chun approach, the boss feels genuine fear for the first time. Chun remarks that Lu doesn't even have a decent knife and isn't worthy of negotiating terms. In his heart, Boss Lu thinks there is definitely something wrong with this guy. Something is seriously suspicious. Chun says that Boss Lu keeps looking for trouble and crossing the line, so it is finally time to settle the score. But inside, Boss Lu is thinking fast. He realizes their fuel is gone and fighting head-on is a losing battle. This kid has strange abilities, and his safe house is a gold mine. He decides it would be better to recruit Chen Xiao and earn back his losses with interest. Even though he hates doing it, he forces a smile onto his face. With sparkling eyes and a fake friendly expression, he claims it is all a misunderstanding. He suggests they are just friends who started on the wrong foot and asks Chun if he wants to make a deal. Boss Lu tells Chen Xiao to listen closely to what he has to say. He warns that killing him would only leave blood on Chen's hands without gaining him anything. He adds that while human life is cheap in this world, he can actually help Chun survive and live better. He mentions he has a batch of medicine, antibiotics like penicillin and cephalosporin, and asks if Chun understands how precious those supplies are right now. He explains that even a small infected wound can take a life. He offers a deal. If Chun lets him go, he will split that batch of medicine with him. Chen Xiao listens carefully and admits that in times like these, antibiotics are indeed valuable currency. He honestly tells Boss Lu that he has more than just this one room, and his stockpile is far larger than Lu could ever imagine. Hearing this, Boss Lu looks shocked. Lu immediately points out that Chun only has food and water, but without medicine, a single illness could be fatal. He suggests they cooperate, revealing that the medicine is stored in an abandoned factory in the West District, and only he knows the password. Chun stares at him coldly for a moment before agreeing, saying that tonight's conflict ends here. He even wraps his arm around Boss Lu's shoulder in a seemingly friendly gesture. Boss Lu hurriedly agrees, saying yes, absolutely, it ends here, and that he is glad the misunderstanding has been cleared up. Chun Xiao tells him to go for now, and they can discuss the details another day. Boss Lu starts to leave. His underlings look confused and call out to him, asking what happened. Boss Lu simply orders them to move, and they all walk away together. Chun Xiao keeps a sharp eye on them as they retreat. Once they are far enough away, he quietly mutters that a simple password can't stop him. Even without it, he can open that door. He turns back to the neighbors still standing there, specifically Grandpa Wang, and reassures him that it is safe now since the gang has left. While Chun speaks to Grandpa Wang, the auntie can barely keep it together. She is panicking, frustrated, and overwhelmed with terror, her status clearly displaying fear plus 100. Grandpa Wang thanks Chun repeatedly. He says Chun saved his life, and if he ever needs anything in the future, he just has to ask. He admits he is too old to fight, but he can still help plant crops or do chores. Chun Xiao gently tells Grandpa Wang that he understands his intentions, but asks him to go back, lock his door, and get some rest. As the moon hangs high and the heat continues to rise even at night, everyone finally retreats indoors. Walking back, one of the thugs mutters that Chun Xiao scared him half to death earlier. Walking ahead of them, Boss Lu sneers and says that Chun Xiao is just a reckless kid. He scoffs at the idea of actually splitting the medicine, admitting that his talk of cooperation was just a stalling tactic. He explains that he only wanted to stabilize the situation first. Once he figures out how to get Chen's supplies, he will deal with him properly. He adds that if Chen thinks he can fight him, he is still far too green. Hearing this, the underlings immediately start flattering him. One of them praises the boss for being wise. Another agrees, adding that since Chun Xiao dared to fight Boss Lu, he probably won't live more than 3 days. Boss Lu's expression turns serious. He notes that something is definitely wrong with Chun Xiao. Even artillery shells couldn't get close to him, which makes no sense. He orders Pineapple Head to spend the next few days investigating Chun carefully. But before he can say another word, a sudden slash chops his head off. The underlings are instantly terrified. One shouts to run, while another screams, wondering if it's a ghost. Unable to believe what just happened, they panic and scatter, leaving Boss Lu's body alone on the ground. On a nearby building, a figure stands quietly with one hand extended. It is Chun Xiao. He calmly bids Boss Lu farewell forever. Later that night, a loud announcement echoes everywhere. It declares a state of emergency. The global high-temperature phenomenon is completely out of control. Multiple climate tipping points have been breached, and the ecosystem is on the verge of collapse. Authorities formally urge residents to make a choice based on their situation. One option is to migrate north to temporary government shelters. The other is to stay put and wait for rescue. The announcement repeats that this is not a drill. Chun Xiao listens and analyzes the situation. He knows that going north to that so-called Pure Land will soon turn into a new purgatory, and waiting for rescue is an even bigger fantasy. He knows deep down that the real nightmare has only just begun. As he thinks about the monsters, he reflects on the future. He knows that soon, heat-resistant mutant beasts will start devouring everything civilization created. He also knows that awakened humans will emerge and form factions, fighting over resources and killing each other. He realizes his goal isn't just to guard this safe house. He wants to turn it into the ultimate fortress for survival in the apocalypse. Outside, people are already starving. Someone shouts that they are dying of hunger and their homes have burned down, asking why Chun Xiao gets to live comfortably. Another person yells that Chun Xiao is occupying a massive, sturdy fortress all by himself, enjoying food, drinks, and air conditioning. Anger builds among the crowd. One man starts pounding on the door, shouting for Chun Xiao to come out. He blames Chun for refusing to help earlier, claiming that everyone ended up like this because of him. He demands an explanation. Others join in, declaring that Chun must share the safe house. They claim everyone should take turns living there for collective survival, smirking as they say it. Inside, Chun Xiao doesn't react at all. He listens to relaxing music while calmly doing household chores, completely at ease. He even takes a picture of his delicious meal and posts it online, casually scrolling through the comments afterward. As he reads the reactions, status notifications pop up. jealousy plus 150, anger plus 130, despair plus 95. Chun Xiao looks at the comments and thinks that incompetent rage is the cheapest emotion in the apocalypse. Outside, the crowd can only shout, curse, and throw things to vent their frustration. Some even smash their own phones. One man throws his device and curses, saying that since Chun refused to do things the easy way, he'll be forced to do them the hard way, swearing he will take Chun down. Meanwhile, Chun Xiao thinks about the abandoned factory in the West District and decides to scout the route. However, the moment he steps out, the crowd starts throwing objects at him. Amidst the flying debris, a machete suddenly flies straight toward him. As Chen Xiao dodges the objects flying straight at him, he sees a group of people charging forward. They shout that if he doesn't give up his house today, they'll cripple him. But the moment they see Chun Xiao rushing straight at them, they are stunned. Chun Xiao grabs one attacker's wrist and twists it hard, forcing him to drop his weapon. The man can't believe how fast Chun Xiao is. Another thug tries to attack from behind, but Chun Xiao easily dodges that too. After disarming the first guy, Chun Xiao now holds the weapon himself. Just then, another man thinks he sees an opening and rushes in to attack. As the guy winds up to strike, Chun Xiao stares at him coldly and unleashes a series of rapid slashes. In an instant, all the attackers are lying on the ground. One of the fallen men trembles, accusing Chun Xiao of daring to attack people in broad daylight with so many witnesses watching. A system notification pops up, fear plus 1000. Chun Xiao calmly responds that killing them right now would just dirty his hands, so he won't do it. Hearing this makes the men on the ground feel even more humiliated. As Chun Xiao walks away, he thinks that killing them directly would be letting them off too easily. In this hot weather, their wounds will get infected. They will slowly rot in pain and die within a few days. Sometime later, Chun Xiao arrives at the West District factory, which is sealed shut even during the day. He spots a surveillance camera nearby. He immediately cuts the wire, destroying the camera and the nearby equipment. He slips inside the building and quietly looks around. Suddenly he starts coughing and realizes the air is filled with poison gas. He curses, realizing that this is a trap and he is in real trouble. Just then, he senses other people nearby. A person wearing a gas mask rushes over and quickly injects Chun Xiao with a syringe, catching him off guard. The masked man calmly says that Chun Xiao should feel a bit better now. He explains that although the nerve gas isn't fatal, it is extremely painful. Chun Xiao demands to know who they are. Internally, he wonders why there are guards here since Lu Haifeng never mentioned them. He suspects that old bastard might have set him up, but these strangers don't seem hostile. The masked man puts the syringe away and hands another injection to a woman standing nearby. He introduces himself as Lin Guodong, a biomedical researcher. Chun Xiao looks around and thinks that this place is strange, with all kinds of equipment lying around. It feels more like a high-tech laboratory than a simple medicine storage room. As they walk, Lin says that since Chun Xiao needs medicine anyway, he can take whatever he wants. He tells him to consider it an apology for the trap and also a small gift for their first meeting. Chun immediately starts checking the shelves. He stuffs his bag with all kinds of useful and rare medicines. After a while, he slings the bag over his shoulder and thanks Lin. As Chun turns to leave, Lin watches him closely and calmly says that they will meet again soon. Later that evening, even though the sun has set, the heat is still unbearable. When Chen Xiao finally returns home, he starts to feel uneasy. He thinks that although Professor Lin saved him, the way that man looked at him was creepy. Just then, a notification pops up in the homeowners group chat. Someone is desperately asking for antibiotics or medicine to stop bleeding, offering to buy them at a high price. Chun Xiao looks at the medicine he just looted. He knows the quality is good, but he decides they are not for sale. The group chat explodes with rage at his refusal. One person calls him a selfish villain. Another threatens that once they recover, they will come to his door and kill him. Some notifications start popping up non-stop. Anger plus 99, hatred plus 200, jealousy plus 380. Chun Xiao ignores the insults and starts looking through his bag. Suddenly, his expression freezes. He pulls out a small device and realizes it is a tracker. Chun Xiao inspects the tracker, surprised and suspicious that someone planted it on him unnoticed. Looking at the sunset, he decides not to destroy the device but to turn the situation into a game. With a confident look, he chooses to play along with the stalker. He spots a stray white cat near a green dumpster in the alley. Gently, Chun Xiao attaches the tracking device to the cat's back. He asks the cat to carry the device around the city for him, and the cat simply meows back. The cat runs off along the pipes, carrying the signal away from Chun Xiao. Meanwhile, on a laptop screen, The signal creates a chaotic web of red lines across the city map. Lin Guodong stares at his screen in frustration, unable to understand his target's erratic movements. At home, Chun Xiao checks the group chat. A man sends desperate messages begging for medicine for his dying brother. Immediately after, a woman holding a child begs for water, offering to trade picture books. Chun Xiao looks at the phone coldly, remembering from his past life that her pity act was just a manipulative trick. He reads a hateful message accusing him of being a monster for hoarding supplies while a child is dying. Unmoved, he dismisses the moral pressure. He looks at a surveillance photo showing a neighbor secretly moving boxes of supplies. Chun Xiao replies, exposing a neighbor named Wang Wei. He reveals her stockpile and challenges her to donate first before he helps. Inside her apartment, Wang Wei looks at her phone in shock. She realizes with horror that Chun Xiao recorded her with hidden cameras and is furious her secrets were exposed. The group chat instantly shifts. Neighbors turn their anger toward Wang Wei, demanding she share her hidden water. Moments later, a group of desperate armed men arrives outside her door. An axe smashes through the wood and Wang Wei stares in terror as her home is breached. A frantic neighbor bursts in, screaming for her to hand over the food. Another man glares with murderous intent, warning her not to force them to use violence. Wang Wei is left cowering in fear. The mob rushes past her, tearing the apartment apart to grab the supplies. Amidst the chaos, the begging woman sneaks in and greedily stuffs her bag with water, ignoring her child. Afterward, Wang Wei sits alone in her ransacked room, bruised and with torn clothes. She cries in despair, having lost her supplies and dignity to the mob directed by Chun Xiao. In the stairwell, neighbors face the heat wave. A group stands over a rotting body, bidding their brother farewell. Panic sets in. A man screams that leaving the corpse will spread disease, shouting in despair. Suddenly, Lin Guodong descends the stairs with his assistant, telling everyone to stay calm. He claims to be a medical team from the city's CDC sent to help. Putting on gloves, Lin apologizes for the delay and maintains a professional demeanor to lower their guard. He inspects the victim, stating they can handle it, but warning that the body must be disposed of to prevent a plague. The neighbors watch him with respect and hope as he examines the dead man. To solidify his cover, Lin hands out disinfectant wipes and medicine, telling them to share the limited resources. The neighbors are overcome with gratitude, naively believing the government has finally sent help. However, Lin is only there to track the signal. He realizes the erratic movements stopped nearby and deduces his target is hiding close. High up in his fortress, Chun Xiao observes the situation in the building across from him. He cries to identify Professor Lin Guodong in the crowd, confirming his suspicions. Chun Xiao realizes Lin must be actively tracking him using the planted bug. Suddenly, a vibration from his pocket interrupts his thoughts. He checks a text message from an unknown number. Watch out for that doctor. He stares at the screen, confused about who sent the message and how they know the danger. Standing by the window, he looks at the skyline, trying to process this new variable. The alert reflects in his eyes as he realizes the situation is becoming more complicated. Meanwhile, the lens of a high-powered telescope is focused on the area. A mysterious figure on a rooftop uses the telescope to secretly observe the events. Chun Xiao realizes that besides Lin Guodong, someone else is watching him from the shadows. Chun Xiao tries to dial the number that sent the mysterious warning. However, an automated voice says it is a virtual number and cannot receive calls. He looks at the yellow sky, realizing that the sender is hiding their identity on purpose. Standing by the window, he looks at his phone with suspicion. He wonders if this is kindness or if someone is using him as a weapon against Professor Lin. Down below, Lin Guodong plays the savior. He tells neighbors that bodies must be handled correctly to prevent trouble in this heat. He smiles, acting like a caring doctor. He tells everyone to be careful of heat stroke and see him if they feel sick. Chun Xiao watches the scene from high up with a cold stare. Watching Lin among the neighbors, he notices something on the doctor's coat. He zooms in on the hem and sees dark marks looking like blood mixed with dried chemicals. He remembers that after the heat wave began, medical teams appeared in some areas. They took blood samples for epidemic prevention. But after these checkups, healthy survivors would disappear. Unaware he is being watched, Lin Guodong tapes a notice onto the community board. Two neighbors read the sign excitedly. It says a free health check station opens in parking lot 3 tomorrow to prevent disease. Promises exams, treatment, and a free bottle of water. The neighbors call Professor Lin a saint, unaware it is a trap. In a dark alley, the white cat stops to eat from a food can. Standing over it, Lin Guodong looks down. He realizes why the signal was moving strangely. He was tracking a stray animal, not his target. As he pets the cat, he looks calm, but hidden syringes clink in his pocket. Lin Guodong's face darkens, realizing he was outsmarted. The system tells Chun Shao he collected speechlessness and unwillingness from the doctor. As Lin mutters, he was spotted. In the shadows nearby, Chun Shao peeks out, watching Lin interact with the cat. He stares, confirming that Lin was personally tracking him. At underground parking lot 3, now the medical station, many survivors fill the space. People stand in line, wiping away sweat. They say that while they need rain, it is at least cooler underground. At the front, Lin Guodong and his assistant sit at a table, asking patients about their age and pain. An old man named Chun Da sits and gives his history, mentioning high blood pressure. Unnoticed, Chun Shao has entered the area. Wearing a hoodie to hide his face, he leans against a pillar, watching silently. He watches the team draw blood. When the patient asks why a test is needed for heat stroke, they call it a routine check. However, the vial is labeled GHT-017, suggesting this is not routine. Chun Shao glares at the doctor, sweating as he tries to guess what experiment Professor Lin is running. Lin Guodong sits calmly holding a tray of blood samples, looking like a professional researcher. A group of young men rushes in, looking panicked. They support a friend with a bandaged arm, begging the doctor to save him from an infection. Lin Guodong takes out a vial with glowing blue liquid labeled T7 prototype. He tells the men this is a new enhancer that speeds up healing and fights infection. The group accepts, and the blue liquid is injected into the injured man's arm. Lin Guodong watches with a cold look behind his glasses. He tells the patient to rest, saying he will recover soon. The injured man, sweating, thanks Professor Lin. However, as the drug works, his face changes. He becomes dizzy, his eyes looking unfocused as a strange reaction starts. From the shadows, Chun Shao sees Lin is observing people like lab rats, not saving them. He wonders what reaction the doctor expects. That evening, outside the lot, the group walks home. The injured man, Abu, looks terrible, holding his arm while friends ask if he is okay. Abu stops walking. Sweating, he tells his boss, Jiang Cheng, that his bones burn and the pain is bad. Under the bandage, his veins bulge and pulse with a scary red light. The infection spreads fast. Abu's face twists, eyes glowing red, and veins popping out as the medicine takes effect. Huge energy erupts from his body, and he screams in pain and rage. Jiang Cheng and the others watch in horror, asking what is wrong. Abu lunges and grabs Jiang Cheng by the throat with one hand. Terrified, Jiang Cheng struggles to breathe. He orders Abu to let go, reminding him he is the boss. But the drug increased Abu's hidden anger. Eyes full of hate, Abu screams, asking why he used Abu as a human shield against a knife before. With huge strength, Abu lifts Jiang Cheng and slams him into the ground. Panting, Abu senses someone nearby. He spins around, shouting to know who is there. From the alley shadows, Chun Shao steps out, looking calm. Abu's eyes widen as he recognizes him. Abu, consumed by the drug's rage, screams and charges forward with speed and aggression. He tries to grab Chun Shao with mutated strength, but Chun Shao easily dodges the clumsy attack. Chun Shao notices that while the enemy's strength has tripled, his joints are stiff and his attacks are straight and predictable. Chun Shao realizes that the blue liquid injected into the man caused an abnormal reaction. As Abu lunges again, Chun Shao stands his ground and summons dark energy in his hand, ready to strike back. His eyes glow red as he covers his face, deciding to end the fight now. Chun Shao unleashes a deadly spatial slash. The invisible blade slices through Abu's neck before the mutant can react. The massive body of the mutated man collapses to the ground, dead. Later, as the sun sets, footsteps echo in the empty alleyway. A man walks purposefully toward the scene of the fight. It is Lin Guodong. He looks at a tracker, confused why the signal from the nanorobot in Abu's injection stopped so suddenly. He halts as he sees the scene before him. Lin Guodong's eyes widen, shocked by the outcome. He sees Jiang Cheng sitting in terror next to the decapitated corpse of Abu, confirming his experiment is over. Lin Guodong scans the face of the corpse with his phone. He checks his tablet. The data shows the T7 prototype caused a breakdown, but was not the cause of death. He crouches to inspect the severed neck of the mutant. Lin Guodong sees the fatal wound is smooth, identical to the cut that killed Boss Lu and the marks on the door lock. He turns serious, realizing the killer used no weapons to make these marks. This is not the work of an ordinary person. He remembers Chun Shao and smiles. He was right when he first felt the young man was unusual. Lin Guodong looks down greedily, thinking this person has the power he has been searching for. Jiang Cheng starts coughing, breaking the silence. Lin Guodong approaches, warning him not to move due to internal bleeding. Zhang Chong recognizes the doctor and begs to be saved. He asks what happened to his friend, Abu. Lin Guodong pretends to be sorry, then shows a picture of Chen Xiao on his tablet. He lies that the death is related to this man and asks if he knows him. The screen shows Chen Xiao clearly. The man recognizes the face and tells the doctor he knows Chen Xiao and where he lives. Satisfied, Lin Guodong smiles. He tells the man not to worry and invites him to his lab for professional treatment. Zhang Chong thanks Professor Lin, unaware he will likely be the next test subject. In the cold, sterile corridors of Lin Guodong's laboratory, Lin walks down the hall while an assistant pushes Zhang Chong. Nervous and sweating, Zhang asks how Abu turned into a monster right after the injection, since he was fine before. He remembers the needle, and fear appears on his face. Lin Guodong explains coldly that it was a rare, extreme rejection reaction. He insists they must check him to arrange treatment. They arrive at a heavy sealed door. Zhang Chong stares at it, feeling this is not a place for healing. Panicking, Zhang Chong stammers that he wants to go home and take antibiotics. Ignoring his fear, Lin Guodong swipes his keycard to unlock the door. Lin leans in close, looking ominous. He orders the man to be quiet, for science and for yourself, leaving him no choice. Realizing his fate, Zhang Chong screams in terror, begging them not to do this. His eyes bulge with fear as he is forced inside. The door slams shut, and the in-isolation sign lights up. The man's agonizing screams echo through the hallway as he meets a grim fate. Inside his safe house, Chen Xiao lies on his sofa, resting in the cool air. He stares at the ceiling, wondering what Lin Guodong is planning and what his goal is. A sound alerts him and he sits up. Outside, a hand presses the electronic doorbell. Chen Xiao checks the monitor. Lin Guodong stands outside the gate. The professor smiles at the camera, introduces himself and asks for help. That mad scientist was standing right outside his door. So you really do leave here, Chen Xiao. Sorry for bothering you this late. After saying that, Professor Lin gently pushed the door open and stepped inside. Standing in the living room, Chen Xiao met his gaze. Professor Lin, showing up this late, is there something you need? Professor Lin looked perfectly calm. I heard you live here, so I thought I'd stop by and see you. Naturally, Chen Xiao didn't buy that excuse for a second. But since the man had come to him on his own, Chen Xiao didn't mind playing along. He casually told Professor Lin to have a seat. Looking around the room, Professor Lin said meaningfully, this place is unusual. Double-layer heat-insulated glass and independent water circulation system. This doesn't look like an ordinary house. It looks more like an apocalypse shelter. Could it be that you already knew this extreme heat disaster was coming? Chen Xiao answered with an easy joke. I bought the renovation package during last year's Singles Day sale. The contractor said it would last 50 years. I thought he was exaggerating, but maybe the guy was a prophet after all. Professor Lin smiled faintly. Interesting, but Chen Xiao, the real reason I came tonight is that I want to ask you about something. Your neighbor Abu is dead, and Lu Haifeng died not long ago too. I examined both of their bodies in both cases. The cervical spine was severed instantly, and the cut was as smooth as laser surgery. Lu Haifeng's wound was the same, and a cut like that is beyond ordinary blades. Honestly, even military weapons might not pull it off so cleanly. Hearing that, Chen Xiao deliberately put on the face of someone listening to juicy gossip. Don't tell me the murder weapon came from the same manufacturer. Professor Lin, if you ever figure it out, you should definitely recommend it to me. It was as if Professor Lin thought he was finally about to catch him slipping, and he pressed immediately. And what exactly would you use it for? Chen Xiao didn't even blink. To cut steak, obviously during weather like this, the fridge isn't stable and tough meat goes fast on a good blade. It makes all the difference. Professor Lin's probing hit a dead end, and a visibly speechless look crossed his face. Even so, he slowly continued. No matter how you look at it, both men were probably killed by the same person, and whoever did it used methods so precise and professional. Clearly, it wasn't an ordinary man. Chen Xiao's expression instantly turned cold. Maybe they were just unlucky and messed with something they never should have touched. A calculating glint flashed through Professor Lin's eyes, like he had finally found an opening. And yet, I heard both of them had conflicts with you. The moment those words landed, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Chen Xiao only gave a faint smile. Professor Lin, you've got quite the imagination. I'm just an ordinary guy. What could I possibly do? But then again, showing up at my place in the middle of the night with a medical kit. Don't tell me you think I'm about to die too. Besides, I don't remember ever telling you where I live. Professor Lin answered by pulling up a piece of footage. You recognize this man, don't you? He's the one who told me you lived here. Chun Zhao's eyes darkened slightly. Zhongchong really was tough enough to keep hanging on. Too bad falling into the hands of that old fox was probably worse than death. So he asked, and how is he now? Professor Lin answered in a calm voice. He's adapting to a new treatment. Under extreme heat, the human body evolves. He's simply progressing faster than most. That answer set off alarms in Chun Xiao's mind. Was Professor Lin really running human experiments? And more importantly, what exactly had brought him here tonight? At that exact moment, a footage showed Zhongchong suddenly mutating. He tore free from every medical restraint on his body, his vital signs spiking violently as one value flashed red. Genetic mutation rate, 37%. Then Professor Lin slid a syringe toward Chun Xiao. This is an immune enhancer I developed. It protects against multiple pathogens in high-temperature environments, and it has no side effects. Looking straight at Chun Xiao, Professor Lin said slowly, I know you're not ordinary. The heat will continue. The world will change. The survival rate for normal people won't even reach 10%. But some people will evolve first. Chun Xiao gave him a mocking look. Evolved like Zhongchong? Professor Lin's face didn't change. That is a necessary cost. The progress of scientific research always requires someone to go first. You carry a far more stable evolutionary trait. We could work together and find a way for humanity to adapt to the new world. Chun Xiao answered lightly, no need. Part of him actually wanted to see what Professor Lin would look like once he realized he'd been rejected. Sure enough, Professor Lin's face darkened. You don't have to refuse so quickly. The heat will continue. Infectious diseases will spread. Mutated life forms are only going to appear one after another. Work with me, and this knowledge, this technology will keep you alive longer. Time is running out for everyone. If you change your mind, the doors of my laboratory will always be open to you. By the time he turned to leave, Professor Lin's expression had turned thoroughly ugly, though his thoughts remained ice-cold and precise. Chun Xiao's mental stability was extraordinary, and his defensive awareness was on an entirely different level. Clearly, he was no ordinary human. Compared with raw genetic data, a living specimen was worth far more. Chun Xiao, you won't escape me. Chun Xiao lowered his eyes to the syringe the professor had left behind and almost laughed. The bastard really had wrapped human experimentation in the language of noble science. If Chun Xiao didn't get rid of him soon, peace wouldn't last much longer. Since Professor Lin was so obsessed with studying evolution, Chun Xiao would let him see with his own eyes what true evolution actually looked like. And the mutant standing before him was Professor Lin's very first masterpiece. Vital signs stable. Adrenaline levels have crossed the threshold. Mutation process complete. Rational cognition signal has dropped to 0. Gripping the lab equipment in excitement, Professor Lin muttered success. Hatred, fear, pain. They really are the perfect catalysts. Zhongchong, you've been reborn. Now go complete your first mission. Bring Chun Xiao back to me alive. Seeing that, Su Rui asked in confusion. Using living people to create monsters. Is this really the path of human evolution you've always talked about? Professor Lin didn't answer her directly. Instead, he asked calmly. This is your first time taking part in an experiment since entering the program. How does it feel? As he spoke, he told her to complete the final step of the procedure. Su Rui was clearly resisting. Professor, this is human experimentation that you've already crossed the ethical line. But Professor Lin remained calm. Ethics, Su Rui. When the apocalypse comes, morality becomes a luxury. His sacrifice may buy more people a chance to survive. After saying that, he personally opened the lab door. Zhongchong, go now. Bring Chun Xiao back. Growling low in his throat, Zhongchong stared at the open doorway, then bolted out like a beast that had finally broken its cage. It didn't take long before he reached Chun Xiao's neighborhood. But when he forced his way inside, the house was completely empty. Just then, Zhongchong caught a familiar scent and whipped his head around. Not far behind him, Chun Xiao was leaning under a tree. In the shade, he said with a mocking grin, well, Zhongchong, so it really is you. You've got a few days apart and you've turned into quite a sight. So tell me, should I keep calling you Zhongchong or should I just start calling you Wang Kai? Zhongchong roared and lunged at him, forcing the words out in broken bursts. Chun should die. The moment those words came out, the emotional fluctuation around him spiked even harder. The harvesting efficiency jumped by more than 30%. Interesting. Backing away as he spoke, Chun Xiao said, come on, let's move somewhere with a little more room. I'm not fighting you at my doorstep. Forget disturbing the neighbors. If you wreck my safe house, you can't afford to pay for it. With that, he drew Zhongchong all the way down into the underground parking garage. In the next instant, Chun Xiao flashed in front of him and said coldly, Now try a taste of my spatial severing. But to his surprise, the strike landed and Zhang Chong came out completely unharmed. Chen Xiao was genuinely startled. He hadn't expected the guy's hide to harden to this level. Grinding out Chen Xiao's name through clenched teeth, Zhang Chong was clearly trying to catch him during the recovery window after an attack and pin him down in one move. Too bad. Chen Xiao still held the absolute edge in speed. While dodging, Chen Xiao didn't stop taunting him. Zhang Chong, you were always all brawn and no brains. Now you can't even speak like a human anymore. And seriously, you look as ugly as hell. Professor Lin's taste is terrible. Maybe next time I'll introduce you to a decent barber. Unable to catch Chen Xiao no matter how hard he chased, Zhang Chong was left with nothing but impotent rage. But then, all of a sudden, he stopped pursuing. The fury inside him began multiplying by the second, and the already grotesque muscles on his back started writhing and mutating even further. Alarm bells instantly went off in Chen Xiao's head. But before he could fully react, he turned for just a moment and Zhang Chong was gone. Fencing that something was wrong, Chen Xiao whipped around and saw Zhang Chong roaring as he appeared behind him, sharp bone spikes still shooting out from his body. Chen Xiao instantly shifted into a defensive stance and retreated at speed. Even so, one of the spikes still struck a vital spot. In the surveillance room, Professor Lin burst into laughter. Second stage mutation, an emotional surge, can actually trigger a morphological mutation too. Su Rui, record all the data. But Su Rui's heart was already wavering. Was this really the path that would save humanity? Earlier, Chen Xiao had only meant to provoke Zhang Chong and harvest emotion points. Instead, he had pushed the mutation even further. Zhang Chong had turned into a monster covered in bone spikes, and those spikes had already left Chen Xiao badly wounded. Zhang Chong gave him no time to recover. After mutating, his powerful body came crashing forward like a shell, and Chen Xiao instinctively threw up both arms to block. But the force of that attack was far beyond what Chen Xiao expected. His heart jolted and he immediately shifted his weight, trying to slip away to the side. What he didn't expect was that Zhang Chang's post-mutation reaction speed had become this fast. The instant Chen Xiao moved aside, those razor-sharp claws were already ripping toward him with a violent rush of air. Even then, the system panel still showed Zhang Chang's stats continuing to rise. At the same time, Chen Zhao's skill, spatial severing, was finally close to meeting its upgrade condition. He opened his mouth again and mocked Zhang Chong, saying he looked ridiculous now, like some oversized hedgehog. As expected, mutated Zhang Chong was ready to blow up at the slightest provocation. And Chen Xiao had no intention of stopping there. Back when you were collecting protection money in the old district, at least you still had the guts to swing a steel pipe in a real fight. Now you've taken a few injections, grown a bunch of bones, and suddenly you think you're somebody? That damn Dr. Lin tells you who to bite. And you go bite them, what are you if not a dog? Watching the emotion points spilling off Zhang Chong non-stop, Chen Xiao couldn't help letting a smile curl at the corner of his mouth. But it seems he wasn't the only one pleased in Professor Lin's eyes. The emotional peak had just broken past the threshold, and Zhang Chang's bone density had risen another 5%. To him, Chen Xiao was practically a gift from heaven for helping push Zhang Chong further, while Su Rui at his side still couldn't understand why Chen Xiao was doing any of this. Right then, Zhang Chong finally completed another round of mutation, and every bone spike on his body turned blood red. One spike after another shot wildly out from his flesh. Chen Xiao, however, stayed completely at ease that he moved with nimble precision, dodging each deadly spike while continuing to provoke Zhang Chong with his words. At last, the negative emotion points he had gathered reached the threshold for a skill evolution. The moment Zhang Chong exposed an opening, Chen Xiao activated Spatial Rift, Annihilation. The bone spikes Zhang Chong fired were instantly swallowed by a black void that appeared out of nowhere. Even Zhang Chang's arm was caught in it and twisted out of shape. His mutated body couldn't endure that kind of pain, and he passed out on the spot. Looking down at him, Chen Xiao let out a cold, disdainful chuckle. Then he ripped the live monitor off Zhang Chang's body and said coldly into it, "Your test subject's kind of disappointing. Next time, send me one that can actually fight." The veins on Professor Lin's forehead immediately bulged. But what filled him wasn't anger. It was pure hunger for a perfect specimen. "Good. Very good. Chen Xiao, you really are different." Chen Xiao only replied flatly that he had simply done Zhang Chong the favor of giving him a proper end, considering they had once been neighbors. But just then, footsteps sounded from behind him as a stranger slowly approached while clapping. Impressive. Really impressive. The mysterious man who had only dared contact Chen Xiao through secret texts before was now standing openly in front of him. Chen Xiao immediately became wary of Chen Shixing's sudden appearance, because it was obvious the man had watched the entire fight with Zhang Chong from start to finish. As if he sensed the tension in the air, Chun Shirshing spoke first. That fight just now was impressive. Just as I thought. This may be an age of despair, but it'll also be the age when gods begin to rise. Chun Shao could vaguely hear the deeper meaning in those words. But by all logic, at this point in time, aside from himself and Professor Lin, no one else should know that powers even existed. He quietly began gathering spatial energy, ready to fight or retreat at a moment's notice. But Chun Shirshing paid no attention to his subtle movement and said calmly, with the precision and destructive force of your ability, "There's no way you're some unfinished product Lin Guodong made." Hearing that, Chun Shao became even more guarded and started suspecting even more strongly that Chun Shirshing might be one of Professor Lin's people. But the next thing Chun Shirshing said wiped that suspicion away, because he turned out to be the same person who had texted Chun Shao earlier and warned him to stay away from Professor Lin. At that moment, the only thing Chun Shao still couldn't figure out was how Chun Shirshing had gotten his number in the first place. Chun Shirshing let out a quiet laugh and said bluntly that in an apocalypse where the old rules were already falling apart, tracing a phone number was almost effortless. Besides, the ARC group he belonged to had its own intelligence network. "My name is Chun Shirshing, and I'm here on behalf of ARC to invite you to join us, and we can offer you real help." But to Chun Shao, the so-called ARC organization didn't matter much at all. What truly mattered was the fact that ability users had started appearing earlier in this life. Even so, Chun Shirshing kept going on and on about the benefits of joining ARC until Chun Shao finally followed his lead and asked, "So what exactly is ARC?" Chun Shirshing answered calmly, "ARC is an organization dedicated to finding awakened individuals. We believe the world is about to undergo a massive transformation, and only true elites deserve to board the Ark of the New Age, and you clearly qualify. Chun Shao, I can offer you things Ling Guodong never could. We can make you stronger. Not through grotesque mutation, but by letting you keep your reason, control your power, and step onto a true path of ascension beyond ordinary humanity." The moment he heard that, Chun Shao understood. Ark was just another nest of fanatics. The world might have changed, but he was still the kind of person who didn't believe in gods, demons, or any holy doctrine. And more than anything, Chun Shao hated having other people decide his path for him. Whether it was a complete madman like Ling Guodong, or a self-proclaimed elite hypocrite like Chun Shirshing, he wasn't choosing either of them. "I walk my own road. I'm used to standing alone. I don't need anyone teaching me how to live, and I definitely don't need to join some ARC group." Instead of getting angry at the rejection, Chun Shirshing seemed to admire Chun Shao even more. He stopped trying to persuade him and simply turned to leave, offering only one final reminder. In a world on the brink of collapse, savage growth might keep someone alive for a while, but not forever. The day you realize that one person's strength has limits, ARC's doors will still be open to you. With that, Chun Shirshing's figure slowly faded away. Watching the traces he left behind, Chun Shao thought to himself that none of that was really his concern. Still, it was interesting. The man had looked emotionally stable, yet he had still contributed quite a bit of negative emotion. As for the so-called limit Chun Shirshing talked about, Chun Shao would prove with his own actions that there's no final wall at all when it comes to him. There was only the starting line beneath his feet. But before that, it was time to finally put an end to this whole farce with Professor Lin. To bring that mess to a close, Chun Shao personally broke into Professor Lin's laboratory, and there he saw something he would never forget for the rest of his life. This was Lin Guodong's vision of scientific progress, disgusting to the core. While Chun Shao was still thinking, Professor Lin slowly stepped into view. He wasn't surprised to see Chun Shao here at all. Madness in his eyes, a perfect specimen. Like Chun Shao could never settle for an ordinary life. So Zhang Chong really did lose. Still, if he managed to bring you here, then at least his death had some value. What is it? Have you finally made up your mind? Ready to devote yourself to the great evolution of mankind? As for Chun Shirshing and that so-called arc of his, they're nothing but hypocrites dressed up in holy robes. Listen carefully, Chun Shao. Every step of human progress has been built on corpses and rivers of blood. Your ability is a heaven-given treasure. It shouldn't be wasted on the petty concerns of ordinary people. Professor Lin kept rambling on and on, completely oblivious to the open disgust on Chun Shao's face. Only when he had finally heard enough did he cut in coldly. "Are you done talking yet? What the hell does humanity's progress have to do with me? I didn't care enough to bother with your nonsense before, but you really shouldn't have disturbed my peace." As the words left his mouth, Chun Shao quietly activated his spatial ability and attacked Professor Lin without hesitation. "So I'm just gonna have to erase you." But Professor Lin calmly pressed a button. "Chun Shao, you really are too young. If I let you come in here, then of course I already had a way to keep you. After your fight with Zhang Chong, how much strength do you really have left? Why not just behave and stay with me? It'll save you a lot of pain." Chun Shao answered with a single cold word. "No, Hearing that, Professor Lin immediately pressed a button. Then there's only one ending left for you. The instant he finished speaking, the glass containers all across the lab exploded. Chen Xiao quickly raised an arm to shield himself. When he forced his eyes open again, he saw a whole pack of mutated humans roaring as they lunged at him. At Chen Xiao's current level, he wasn't afraid of the mutants Professor Lin had cultivated. The problem was their numbers and the way their attack patterns overlapped chaotically. Before long, one failed dodge was enough for his right arm to take a heavy hit. Seeing that, Professor Lin burst in a triumphant laughter. "Stay here. Chen Xiao, I'll make you even stronger." Chen Xiao only sneered. "You think a few brainless freaks are enough to keep me here? While fighting them, I already figured out their attack pattern. Their physical stats are strong, sure, but their movements are stiff. Their flexibility is terrible." It didn't take long before Chen Xiao found an opening and wiped out the entire group with a single strike of spatial annihilation. "I thought you'd have something more impressive than this. You really thought 3 monsters would be enough to hold me? Professor Lin, you're the naive one. And it seems you've lived your 40 or 50 years for nothing." As he spoke, Chen Xiao strode toward Professor Lin with killing intent rolling off him. Looking at the fear on the man's face, he didn't hesitate for even a second and aimed a spatial slash straight through Professor Lin's throat. Clutching at his neck, Professor Lin forced out a ragged sound. "Chen Xiao, you really are impressive, but all the data on the mutation serum has already been sent out. The seeds have been planted. This world is only going to get more interesting." Those words stuck with Chen Xiao, but in his current condition, getting back to the shelter for treatment came first. Just then, Professor Lin's assistant, Su Rue, suddenly called out to him. "If you try to walk back like that, you won't make it home. Relax. I'm not here to hurt you." As she said that, she stepped closer holding a restorative fluid, saying it could stop the bleeding fast and stabilize his injuries. Chen Xiao had just killed the professor she admired so deeply. Yet Su Rue not only made no move to avenge him, she even handed over all the research supplies he had left behind. It turned out that ever since she learned her teacher had been conducting human experiments, guilt had been eating at her nonstop. Handing over those supplies was the only way she could lighten that burden, even a little. Even so, Chen Xiao remained wary of her. He didn't even dare use the treatment she offered right away. After all, he had just killed the man she once worshipped. Su Rue had clearly expected that response. "It makes sense that you don't trust me, but there are things here you might need. Anyway, if you still have the strength, come with me." Half suspicious, Chen Xiao followed her to a storage room packed with rare medicines that could never be found outside. My teacher knew the heat wouldn't go away. All of this was stockpiled for himself. He liked to talk about sacrificing himself for science, but the truth is he was more afraid of death than anyone that he doesn't need this stuff anymore. "And I'm leaving too. Take whatever you need. Consider it my apology in his place. I applied to become his graduate student because he used to be the kind of scientist I truly respected. It was only recently that I learned he'd been conducting human experiments. I may not have participated directly, but I still became an accomplice. I'm going north to another research institute to keep doing the work I should be doing. If I stay alive, I want to create a real cure someday, not a poison that turns people into monsters." Chen Xiao watched Su Rue walk away without saying a word. Having lived through this world once already, he had no desire left to untangle anyone else's moral knots. The only thing he wanted was to live comfortably in this apocalypse. After stripping the place of every useful supply Professor Lin had left behind, Chen Xiao set the entire facility ablaze. Meanwhile, the global heat wave continued to worsen. The average outside temperature had already surged to 58 degrees Celsius. The Global Meteorological Bureau issued another red-level heat alert. Permafrost had fully melted, massive amounts of methane were being released, and experts warned that the greenhouse effect had entered an irreversible death spiral. After seeing that, Chen Xiao turned off the display. The outside world was only going to get harsher. Supplies were still enough for now, but his negative emotion points were running dangerously low. Fortunately, water had now become real hard currency, which meant it was the perfect time to collect a little emotional tax. So Chen Xiao contacted Mu Song immediately. The two of them quickly arranged to meet a buyer at a hidden location. It didn't take long before a figure came hurrying over. This buyer looked like the ruthless type, and he wasted no time showing what he had brought. Chen Xiao gave it a glance and said flatly, "Under normal circumstances, this would be worth 2 bottles. But do I look like the kind of guy who deals in fairness? Today, you get 1. The second those words landed, the man's anger shot through the roof. Seeing that, Chen Xiao pressed even harder. Mad already, then the price just changed again. "Still 1 bottle, but first you say this, Brother Xiao, you're such a saint." The man refused to say it for a long time. Only after Chun Shao warned him that waiting any longer would make the price even worse did he finally grit his teeth and spit the words out. Chun Shao nodded in satisfaction. Good boy. Next time, bring more. Maybe then I'll let you trade for more than half a bottle. On the way back from a deal, Chun Shao ran into Old Man Wang. Old Wang, why are you still out this late instead of resting? That was when he learned that Aunt Lu Yun from the neighboring complex was raising her grandson alone, and the boy was suffering from heat stroke. With the constant water and power outages, she couldn't manage on her own. So Old Man Wang was going to hand over some water to her. Chun Shao warned him that in times like these, water was getting more valuable by the day, and taking care of himself should come first. But Old Man Wang clearly didn't take this to heart. He only sighed and said, I know what you mean, but I'm old enough and can't stand seeing a child suffer. With that, he delivered the bottle of water to Lu Yun's home and repeatedly urged her to make sure the boy drank it right away. But the moment he left, Lu Yun started cursing in her heart. That old bastard took forever and only brought one bottle. Embarrassing. Tomorrow I'll cry a little harder and maybe I can trick another one out of him. What made it even colder was that she hadn't wanted the water to save her grandson at all. She walked over and gently knocked on a tightly shut door. A man in a white lab coat came out almost immediately. Lu Yun instantly switched to a meek, obedient expression and said softly, Mr. Zhao, this is today's offering. Anyway, during another meetup with a buyer, Mu Song was annoyed to find out that the person had canceled the arrangement. It was already the third one during that short period. And at this point, it was obvious they were being targeted. Just then, the two heard a commotion ahead. A mob claiming to be the believers of the Clear Water Society appeared, looking for Chun Shao. Puzzled, Chun Shao asked what they wanted from him. Apparently, this group is furious about Chun Shao's commercial water business, claiming he was committing a grave sin by selling it privately, and as a result, it was making people addictive to doing evil things. Upon hearing this, Chun Shao gave a slight chuckle, then asked if they were drinking their piss instead since they claim his commercial water was evil. The group were angry and embarrassed by this statement, giving Chun Shao a couple of emotion points. And as they foolishly introduced themselves, they also claimed the water in everyone's hands were obtained by draining the earth resources. Therefore, they were tainted. Only by drinking the water purified by Lord Zhaoqian will they not continue to increase their sins. They then demanded Chun Shao hand over all his water to their lord. At this point, even Chun Shao was left speechless, unable to comprehend what he just heard. The guy continued, stating that the global high temperatures were God's punishment on humanity, because they recklessly exploited the Earth's resources and destroyed the Earth's environment. So God sent down divine retribution. Only through restraints can they pray for God's forgiveness. And their lord, Zhaoqian, was God's representative. Pointing in Chun Shao's direction, another believer warns that disaster will strike Chun Shao sooner or later if he doesn't offer his water to their great lord Zhaoqian as soon as possible. Also, he needed to join their Clear Water Society. Chun Shao gave a mocking smile and replied that he was initially curious as to who was hurting his business. But it turns out to be a bunch of weak-willed wimps who'd started believing in a cult. Of course, the Clear Water Society was not pleased with this reply, but believed it was excusable since Chun Shao hadn't seen Lord Zhaoqian display his divine powers. However, as long as Chun Shao sees their lord with his own eyes, he will kneel and worship him devoutly just like them. Mu Song grabbed the boxes of water and stated that they were spouting superstitious nonsense, while Chun Shao remained silent. It was clear that this Lord Zhaoqian might be an awakened. Chun Shao opened the bottle of water in his hand, and after mocking them once more, he slowly drinks the water before stating that it was refreshing. This blatant taunt made the group recoil in horror, and to even spill some of it on the ground, these idiots were now convinced Chun Shao will suffer a terrible karma. At the same time, their disgust, anger, and powerlessness gave Chun Shao over 100 emotion points. Anyway, since enjoying it alone was not as good as enjoying it together, and these fanatics worship Zhaoqian as a god, Chun Shao made them a proposal. Whoever among them curse first that Zhaoqian is a son of a bitch, he'll give him a bucket of water. One curse gets them one full bucket. The leader furiously yelled that it was a direct blaspheming against the gods, and also an unforgivable sin. But from the looks of it, the rest didn't think the same. They asked Chun Shao whether he will truly give them water if they curse. And Chun Shao confirmed this, adding that his promise is always a promise kept. However, in that moment, the leader cut in and yelled for them to shut up if they don't want to receive divine punishment. But a guy at the back suddenly yelled, cursing Zhaoqian as a son of a bitch. Shocked, the leader called for his immediate arrest. They were to hold him down, but the poor guy claimed he couldn't take it anymore and just wanted water to drink. As they drag him away, Chun Shao comments that the guy didn't have the fortune to enjoy his water anyway. Musong said he was scared for a moment there, but luckily, it seems the group didn't do anything drastic. Though things were resolved for now, it wasn't that simple, and Chun Xiao knew this wasn't over yet. However, if they continue to obstruct them from selling water, then there can only be one outcome. They needed to uproot them completely. Later that very night, Chun Xiao tracked the group, and their trail led him to a massive building which seemed to be a church. He deduced that purely violently eradicating them will only cause a greater backlash from the masses. After all, he still needs to interact with people to collect negative emotions. So he decided to see just what kind of trash Zhao Qian really was. Inside, a middle-aged man sat in a luxurious chair, looking down at a woman laid before him. Chun Xiao silently watched from the window as the guy took out a bottle of water and instructed everyone in there to watch closely. Zhao Qian slowly poured the water onto the unconscious woman, and in less than no time, she regained consciousness and some vitality. The believers in there were amazed that just that little amount of water had cured the woman's heatstroke. But this was expected of Lord Zhao Qian. They then vowed to follow him forever. Meanwhile, Chun Xiao thinks the woman was a shill, or perhaps Zhao Qian was one of the awakened like he initially guessed. Inside the cathedral, the woman who had seemingly been cured of heat stroke kneels before the altar in a state of emotional desperation. She begs to serve Lord Zhao Qian as a way to repay him for saving her life, but the cult leader maintains a holy and distant persona. He assures her that the gods recognize every offering made while simultaneously warning the crowd that the current global heat wave is actually a divine culling meant to punish the greedy. According to him, survival is reserved only for those who place their absolute faith in his leadership. He then instructs the gathered men to hand over their unclean water supplies, promising that he will purify them on behalf of the gods. Our protagonist stands at the back of this crowd, where he is immediately spotted by the same thugs he humiliated in the alleyway. They react with hostility, shouting that a heretic like him has no business entering their sacred space. However, Chun Xiao quickly shifts gears and puts on a dramatic act of repentance. He presses his palms together and cries out that he was blind to the truth, claiming that the rising heat and water scarcity have finally terrified him into submission. To sell the performance, our boy drops to his knees and bows low before Zhao Qian, begging for salvation and offering up all of his supposedly unclean possessions. When the young mage looks up, he reveals a massive horde of blue water containers stacked behind him. The sight leaves the cultists in a state of absolute shock due to the sheer volume of the resource. Zhao Qian eyes the protagonist through his glasses, acknowledging his heavy sins, but deciding to play the role of the forgiving shepherd. He tells the young man that the gods are willing to give a lost lamb another chance since he is turning over a new leaf. While he remains in a submissive kneeling position, our hero is actually observing the scam with cold calculation. He realizes that Zhao Qian is simply confiscating everyone's water and returning only the bare minimum to keep them dependent, and he doubts many of these followers will even survive the month. The scene is suddenly interrupted by a man who rushes in to tell Auntie Yoon that her granddaughter has collapsed from heat stroke. Auntie Yoon is confused as she had been giving the child the cult's holy water, but Chun Xiao recognizes her from the shadows. He realizes that the woman had previously lied to Grandpa Wang about the child being sick just to steal his water. Now facing a real crisis, Auntie Yoon throws herself at the leader's feet and offers double the tribute to save the girl. Zhao Qian responds with total indifference, coldly explaining that the gods are not babysitters. He tells her that if the water didn't work, it is simply as she isn't devout enough. He dismisses her despair and announces to the entire congregation that he will perform a true miracle at high noon the following day. As the leader walks away, the goatee man approaches our hero and hands him a white armband featuring the sex logo. He tells the protagonist to wear it as a symbol of his new membership and warns him to never forget the weight of his past sins. Chun Xiao fastens the band to his arm with a submissive look, but as soon as he turns away, his face shifts into a mocking sneer. He knows these people are fools given that he has already hidden trackers on the water jugs he handed over. Following the trail, our boy navigates a dark corridor within the facility and uses his spatial energy to bypass a locked door. Inside, he finds a secret storage room packed with premium food and expensive beverages, confirming that the holy water was just a front for Zhao Qian to hoard luxuries. While hiding among the shelves, our hero watches as the leader enters with the brown-haired woman from the earlier ceremony. The woman looks pale and exhausted, but instead of showing her compassion, Zhao Qian violently slaps her across the face. He berates her for looking sickly, demanding that she play her part better so the public continues to believe in his miracles. The woman falls to the floor and tries to explain that using her ability drains too much of her stamina, but Zhao Qian dismisses her as useless trash. Watching this unfold from the shadows, the young mage realizes that the woman is the actual person with supernatural powers, not the leader. This discovery causes a dark smile to spread across the protagonist's face now that he is beginning to form a new plan to exploit the situation. Since Auntie Yun's granddaughter is suffering from heatstroke, Chen Xiao infiltrates an apartment building under the cover of a foggy night. Our hero enters the girl's bedroom, standing over her as she sleeps. To ensure her recovery, the young boy tosses bottles of water onto her bed. This sudden intrusion causes the girl to wake up in a state of terror, questioning who he is. Our boy doesn't offer a direct introduction, instead crouching by the window and coldly telling her to drink the water and survive the night if she wants her answers. The following day at high noon, a massive crowd gathers in the sun-drenched plaza outside the cathedral for a promised miracle. Zhao Qian sits on a stage, using a fiery solar aura to convince the cultists that his divinity protects him from the 58 degrees heat. This display successfully deceives followers like Auntie Yun, who watches with tears of awe. However, our protagonist stands in the crowd with a cynical expression as he has already figured out the scam. He realizes the cult leader is simply exploiting the ability of the young female awakener standing behind him. As the girl uses her energy to maintain the illusion of heat resistance, Chen Xiao decides to test a theory. He focuses his spatial power, wondering if his energy can physically sever the connection of her ability. Due to this spatial interference, the girl suddenly finds herself unable to project her power onto Zhao Qian. This causes the cult leader to panic as the actual heat of the sun begins to cook him, leading him to grit his teeth and demand to know what is happening. The girl looks around in dread, realizing that someone in the shadows is blocking her reach. Despite her internal struggle, a desperate Zhao Qian whispers for her to get closer and maintain the miracle at any cost. Our boy watches this play out from the crowd and makes eye contact with her, flashing a knowing smile. The girl hesitates as she knows her own physical limits would prevent her from surviving long in the direct sunlight of the plaza. At this moment, the girl remembers a terrifying vision of red eyes and a note left by Chen Xiao, which explained his intent to kill the leader and seize the territory. Realizing she has a chance to switch sides, her expression hardens with determination. She ignores Zhao Qian's screams and insults, turning her back on the stage to walk toward our hero. Once she reaches him, she wraps her arms around his waist to signal her new loyalty. Our protagonist is amused by how quickly she changed her tune, but the girl immediately reveals the true nature of her power. She explains that her ability is called forced heat dissipation, which normally moves internal body heat to the surface. Strangely, the situation takes a dangerous turn for the young mage. The girl reveals a much more lethal application of her gift that targets only the head and heart. By instantaneously extracting heat from these vital areas, she can cause a sudden plunge in blood supply to the brain. As she is currently touching him, she activates this effect on our boy. This forced physiological shift causes Chen Zhao's vision to blur and his head to spin. As the girl's eyes glow with a sinister red intensity, our hero realizes too late that he has been caught off guard by a powerful and unexpected counterattack. The story takes a brief step back into the past to reveal the tragic origins of the young awakener, Lin Jing. In a sunlit alleyway, the brown-haired woman is shown weeping as she desperately tries to keep a dying cat alive. This moment of grief is interrupted by a man shouting from a balcony, demanding she return to him. The memory then shifts to a darker setting where this same man violently attacks her, dragging her by the hair while complaining about the burden of raising her. He reveals his true, predatory nature by demanding she sell herself to strangers just to bring back water for him. While Lin Jing struggles in his grip, the apartment door opens to reveal Zhao Qian and two of his enforcers. Zhao Qian watches the abuse with a look of cold disgust before his men strike the abuser, leaving him bleeding against the wall. Instead of acting out of pure kindness, however, the cult leader reveals his ulterior motive. He tells the trembling girl that he witnessed her perform a miracle by bringing the dead cat back to life. He flashes a warm smile, claiming her power is a gift from the gods, and inviting her to join him to save more souls. Returning to the present day at the plaza, the situation has turned dire for our hero. Two cultists have forced Chen Xiao to his knees, mocking him for his perceived disrespect toward their leader. This temporary submission is short-lived, as the young mage's eyes narrow with lethal intent. In a sudden explosion of movement, our boy summons a jagged arc of spatial energy that slashes through the air. The strike is so precise and powerful that it sends blood spraying across the scene, instantly taking down the thug holding him. As the protagonist stands up, the surrounding crowd of neighbors and cultists recoils in absolute horror, labeling him a demon. Our hero remains completely unfazed by their fear, and looks back at the cowering Zhao Qian with a gaze of pure contempt. He explains to the terrified onlookers that these so-called holy men were nothing more than common criminals long before the world ended, specializing in arson and extortion. He tells the neighbors that their blind faith in such obvious scum makes them a lost cause. At this moment, Mu Chong arrives and hands the protagonist a thick stack of intel confirming the group's criminal history. This revelation causes a stir in the crowd, particularly for Auntie Yoon. She is stunned to see her granddaughter ailing running toward her in perfect health. Auntie Yoon initially tries to credit Zhao Qian for this recovery, claiming her prayers saved the child and urging the crowd to take down the demon Chun Xiao. However, the young girl looks at her grandmother and the neighbors with utter disbelief, questioning if they have lost their minds. Ailing steps forward to defend our protagonist, pointing directly at him and revealing the truth. She explains that the cultist they worshipped did nothing for her. Instead, it was the big brother standing before them who secretly visited her the previous night. A flashback confirms that our boy sat on her windowsill and provided her with an electrolyte drink that stabilized her condition. Ailing shouts at the crowd, making it clear that she would have died if she had relied on their superstitions instead of his actual help. The tension reaches a breaking point when Lin Jing suddenly collapses onto the pavement. Because she is no longer providing his protection, Zhao Qian snaps and enters a manic rage. He pulls out a handgun and aims it at the fallen girl and our hero, calling them useless trash. He fires a shot, but the bullet never reaches its target. To the cult leader's shock, Chun Xiao catches the projectile in a swirling disk of spatial energy. Our protagonist examines the trapped bullet with a bored expression, casually noting that it might be worth something later. Realizing his gun is useless, Zhao Qian reveals his final trump card. He pulls out a blue syringe and injects himself with a serum, which our hero immediately recognizes as the twisted work of Professor Lin. Because of the drug, the cult leader undergoes a horrific transformation, his body swelling into a hulking, muscular giant. He lunges at the young mage with incredible speed, laughing about his new immune booster. The fight becomes physical as the mutated Zhao Qian catches our boy in a powerful bear hug. In a desperate suicide move, the giant leaps off the high balcony, intending to drag the protagonist down to the stone plaza with him. As they plummet, Zhao Qian screams about his bitter past, revealing he was once a struggling student whose research was stolen by academic elites. He views the global catastrophe as the only thing that leveled the playing field for him and blames our hero for ruining his newfound power. Our protagonist remains entirely calm despite the high-speed fall, telling the man he is simply too loud. Just as they are about to hit the ground, a system prompt appears, signaling that our hero has unlocked a new ability called Spatial Blink. His body flickers and vanishes into thin air, leaving Zhao Qian's arms empty. The mutated cult leader crashes into the plaza fountain with a lethal impact, creating a splash of blood. Standing safely nearby, Chun Xiao looks down at the wreckage of his enemy, noting that the man's only real mistake was crossing his path. The plaza falls into a suffocating silence following Zhao Qian's violent end. Chun Xiao stands cold and detached, his spatial powers striking such terror into the surviving cultists that they decry him as a practitioner of dark witchcraft. Ignoring their frantic screams, he focuses solely on the unconscious Lin Jing. A quick assessment reveals she is physically unharmed. She has simply collapsed from the sheer shock of the battle and the total exhaustion of her abilities. To assist her, the young mage opens a swirling portal and reaches into the void to retrieve a bottle of water. This act of mercy triggers a wave of fury from the remaining cult members, particularly Auntie Yoon. She points at the fallen girl with a face twisted by grief, screaming that Lin Jing is a wretched monster who must have bewitched their leader into his tragic end. When the crowd attempts to block his path, the protagonist reacts with lethal red eyes as he issues a final warning for everyone to get out of his way. Unfortunately, the elder cultist refuses to back down. He attempts to rally his followers to surround our hero, demanding that they purify the young man's soul with hymns of praise. The cultists join hands to form a fanatical circle, chanting and singing with intense devotion to their fallen god. Chun Xiao finds this display of mindless worship irritating. To end the nonsense, he unleashes a massive spatial shock wave that violently blasts the cultists back, leaving the area splattered with blood. Once the area is cleared, our protagonist crouches beside a newly awakened Lin Jing. He hands her the water and flatly tells her that she needs to drink if she wants to survive her current state of weakness. Dazed by the destruction, the girl asks about Zhao Qian's whereabouts, only for Chun Xiao to bluntly inform her that the man is dead. He even offers her a chance to see the body one last time, though the reality of the situation is interrupted by a Ling, who comes running toward the plaza shouting for her grandmother. Auntie Yoon, however, has reached a total mental breaking point. Because she realizes that her faith was built on a lie and that there are no gods coming to save her, she feels she has nothing left to rely on. In a state of absolute despair, she chooses to end her life by jumping from a balcony. Even though Ling is devastated by the sight, the young girl shows a surprising amount of resolve. While hugging our hero, she explains that she refuses to be like her grandmother, who gave up on life and her own family for the sake of ignorant beliefs. Ling declares her intention to survive the heat wave no matter what. Later that evening at the luxury Safehouse, Lin Jing reflects on her complicated history with the cult leader. She admits that she once viewed Zhao Qian as a savior, but she eventually realized he was only exploiting her powers out of a mix of terror and jealousy. The protagonist points out that the man was a pathetic failure who could never break into elite circles before the apocalypse and failed to become an awakener after it, leaving him to die full of resentment. Although Lin Jing feels guilty for becoming an accomplice to his crimes, she is genuinely grateful to the young mage for her freedom. Ling adds a lighter note to the somber mood by questioning why the cultist would shoot someone as pretty as Lin Jing, leading the girl to wonder if the rumors were true and the leader was actually uninterested in women. Now that the cult is dismantled, Chun Xiao turns his focus toward long-term survival. He overlooks the survivors gathered in the plaza, calculating his next move. Even though he has the power to claim the entire stockpile of hoarded water for himself, he decides that establishing control over the district is more beneficial. He addresses the crowd with authority, promising to share the water supplies as long as they follow his strict orders. While his associate Mu Chong watches with deep suspicion, our boy maintains a knowing smile, already executing a plan to expand his influence. The protagonist begins to formalize his power by sealing off the apartment building with official warning signs. Inside the property office, he forces the current management to sign over the entire structure through a property transfer agreement in exchange for water. Mu Chong is shocked by the sheer scale of the move, but Chun Xiao is completely unapologetic. He explains that having a single floor is no longer sufficient for his needs. Instead, he intends to transform the entire building into a massive, impenetrable doomsday fortress. In his past life, Chun Xiao witnessed the world crumble as temperatures reached a catastrophic 56 degrees Celsius, with the surface heat soaring to 78 degrees Celsius. Since he remembers the dawning horror of watching skyscrapers tilt and collapse under extreme thermal stress, he knows exactly how precarious their current situation is. He understands that while things are bad now, the second heat wave will be far more brutal, eventually softening steel rebar and causing high-rises to drop like stones. That is why our hero has taken the initiative to secure property contracts and legal documents for his entire building. Luckily, the remaining residents trusted his judgment and agreed to vacate, allowing him to begin the necessary renovations to reinforce the structure against the coming apocalypse. On the television, a news anchor suggests that the current 30-day heat wave might be receding, though she warns that temperatures may rebound. Our protagonist can't help but smirk at her use of the word maybe, as he knows for a fact that the worst is yet to come. Still, as the heat has temporarily dipped, the people of Luo City are cautiously stepping outside to enjoy a breath of fresh air for the first time in what feels like forever. Our boy realizes that this brief window of relative comfort is the perfect time to start construction, but he has a few loose ends to tie up within his own safe house first. Inside the apartment, the young mage finds Ailing casually snacking on the sofa and bluntly asks her when she plans on leaving. Instead of being offended, the young girl gives him a mischievous look and asks if he is trying to kick her out. She immediately proves her worth by pointing a finger at a large mosquito and incinerating it with a massive bolt of electricity. Given that generators consume too much fuel and solar panels fail in extreme heat, our protagonist realizes that having a human battery who can generate electricity is a massive strategic advantage. Consequently, he tells her she can stay as long as she likes, prompting the excited girl to run off to check on Lin Jing's move. The hero follows behind, reflecting on how precious Lin Jing's heat dissipation ability is in a world that is literally cooking. He convinced her to move into the building specifically so he could utilize and protect her more effectively. On the way down the stairs, Ailing suddenly realizes she forgot a housewarming gift and bolts back up, leaving Chun Xiao to find Lin Jing's door slightly ajar. When he pushes it open and steps inside, he accidentally walks in on her just as she has finished showering. This leads to a chaotic moment of high blushing panic where both of them are screaming in embarrassment. Our hero tries to defend himself by asking why the door wasn't locked, only for Lin Jing to angrily point out that he hasn't even given her the keys to her new place yet. Once the initial shock wears off, the young mage stands out in the hallway feeling quite exasperated. He seriously asks Lin Jing if she is sure she won't regret moving in with him, wondering if she is afraid he might turn out to be a monster like Zhao Qian. Leaning against the door from the inside, Lin Jing explains that while she knows he wants to use her power, she believes he is someone who will stick to his moral bottom line even while pursuing his own interests. Our boy scoffs at the idea, noting that the future is unpredictable, but he accepts her presence nonetheless. Settled in, the group moves to the warehouse to begin the heavy lifting. Lin Jing takes charge of the water redistribution, treating the grueling labor as atonement for her cult past. As the hall is organized, the protagonist and Lin Jing eventually huddle over a tablet. Now a unified team, they begin mapping out their next move while the world outside continues its slow, inevitable collapse. It is now the 7th day since the extreme heat took a temporary break, and a tall apartment building stands under a hazy sky. At the entrance, 2 men act as sentries to monitor who comes and goes. This organized security reflects the new order within the structure. With the temperature drop, the residents on the lower floors have settled into a comfortable routine. On the 2nd floor, Grandpa Wang quietly waters his plants while Lin Jing reviews documents. Moving up to the 3rd floor, Mu Chang and Li Yuyu enjoy the rare luxury of working air conditioning. Our protagonist has even provided a space for Ailing on the 4th floor, where the young girl spends her time focused on her gaming console. Chun Xiao stands on a high-rise balcony looking down at the courtyard, but his mind is far from relaxed. Although he managed to upgrade the internal circuitry during the cool spell, he realizes that building a true defense system for the entire complex requires resources far beyond what a normal person can find. As his funds are limited, the young mage is forced to consider his next move. His thoughts are interrupted when he spots a group of out-of-town thugs gathered near a car below. Their blue-haired leader has heard rumors about the massive water supply in the building and decides to lead a raid. Since the boss is arrogant and views Luo City as a small prize, he orders his men to simply wreck the place and take what they want. This plan backfires immediately. A short time later, the courtyard is littered with unconscious thugs, while their leader remains on his knees in total defeat. Our boy calmly adjusts his wrist, having used this confrontation as a way to establish dominance. Now that many criminals are currently fleeing across provincial borders to escape the climate shifts, Chun Xiao knows he must be firm. As a result of these displays of power, the local and traveling gangs learn to give his complex a wide berth, allowing the building to remain unusually peaceful as the sun sets. Unfortunately, this peace draws the wrong kind of attention. At the Provisional Government Command Center, a scarred military officer notices that while the rest of Luo City is falling into chaos, one residential complex is suspiciously stable. He remembers that this is the same area where a dangerous cult was recently wiped out, which makes him uneasy. Even though his subordinates argue that they lack the resources to deal with petty gang disputes, the officer follows his gut feeling that something more significant is happening. He reviews CCTV footage from the cathedral and is shocked to see Chun Xiao vanish instantly from the air and reappear unharmed on a rooftop. Recognizing this as a supernatural anomaly, the officer immediately orders a tactical team to investigate the building. Under the cover of night, a squad in green military gear approaches the complex. They are professional and cautious, using a scanning device to detect and reroute an electric grid trap before it can alert the residents. They reach a unit door and use a decryption device to bypass the electronic lock. Once the door is kicked open, 3 soldiers rush into the dark apartment with their rifles drawn, expecting a dangerous combatant. Instead, they find a Ling standing in the middle of the room rubbing her eyes. The little girl is so tired, she initially wonders if her video games are causing her to hallucinate. The soldiers are momentarily confused by the presence of a child, but the lead operative decides to subdue her anyway to secure the room. This proves to be a massive mistake. A Ling's expression darkens as she scolds them for their lack of manners in breaking into a private home. Given that she is a powerful awakener, massive arcs of electricity begin to swirl around her. A surge of energy explodes from the 4th floor, lighting up the exterior of the building as she neutralizes the intruders. While she stands over the unconscious soldiers, she feels a slight bit of worry about attacking government personnel, though she quickly figures the rules of the old world no longer apply. The noise eventually draws our hero out from the hallway. Wearing pajamas and looking annoyed by the late-night racket, Chun Xiao's first instinct is to ask a Ling why she hasn't gone back to her own floor yet. However, his annoyance turns to genuine shock when he sees the tactical gear and the state of the soldiers. As a Ling grins at him and points out that they have a serious problem on their hands, the young mage realizes that his quiet life has officially been compromised by the military. Because 30 minutes have passed since contact was lost with the specialized tactical team, the military has completely surrounded our protagonist's apartment building. The lead officer stands atop a tank and uses a megaphone to demand that Chun Xiao surrender his weapons and return the captured personnel. He warns that failure to comply will result in immediate military intervention. Inside the building, the sudden commotion wakes the residents. Mu Tang sits up in his bed and looks out his window in disbelief, realizing that 3 tanks are parked directly in his courtyard. In another room, Lin Jing peeks through her curtains with an expression of deep worry, questioning why the military has arrived in such strength. Even Grandpa Wang looks toward the hall in confusion. Because he wants to ensure their safety, Chun Xiao sends a message to everyone through their devices, telling them to stay in their rooms while he handles the situation personally. Our hero walks out of the building alone to face the military line. He confronts the soldiers and asks them to explain why they felt the need to break into his home in the middle of the night. The officer responds that the military has already analyzed the footage from the cathedral incident and now knows the truth about his abilities. He explains that superpowers are an incredibly rare asset in the current global crisis and offers our boy a deal. If the young mage agrees to become a research subject, the military is willing to forgive the knight's conflict. However, our protagonist sees right through this offer. He realizes the officer simply wants to lock him in a laboratory for experimentation and flatly declines the invitation. When the officer drops his polite facade and tries to order him into submission, Chun Xiao informs the man that he does not repeat himself, signaling that negotiations are over. As a result of this defiance, the officer raises his hand and orders his men to open fire. The tanks launch their shells, but our boy remains completely calm. He expands a spherical purple-black spatial barrier around his body, which catches the incoming projectiles mid-air. The soldiers watching from the sidelines are paralyzed with shock as they witness their heavy weaponry being rendered useless. To show the true scale of his strength, Chun Xiao reaches his hand toward the sky and creates a dark, swirling spatial rift. He tells the soldiers they can have their weapons back before the rift consumes a helicopter and several missiles, triggering a massive explosion that lights up the night sky. The officer is forced to shield his face from the blast and looks up in a daze, stunned by the sheer level of power the protagonist possesses. Our hero stands as a dark silhouette in the purple aura and warns the commander that his next attack will be aimed directly at the troops. Realizing they are outmatched, the officer finally concedes. However, he delivers a grim warning based on the latest meteorological reports, explaining that the recent heatwave was merely a precursor to a much more devastating event. He looks at the young mage with a desperate expression and argues that the survival of humanity might actually depend on people with his power. Our hero remains unperturbed by this appeal to heroism. He explains that he is no saint and has no interest in being a savior. His only concern is eliminating anyone who disturbs his peace. He points out that the world is about to descend into complete lawlessness, meaning he no longer fears military authority. Despite his cold demeanor, he offers a small opening by suggesting he might help if they are willing to make a deal. The officer is so desperate for assistance that he agrees to almost any terms. Consequently, Chun Xiao reveals his true objective. He demands that the officer mobilize all available military resources and engineering power to transform his entire apartment building into a massive, impenetrable doomsday fortress. The very next day, a formation of military tanks and armored vehicles rolls into the courtyard of the residential complex to begin the promised work. A heavy green military truck equipped with antennae passes the apartment building as the project kicks off. The scarred military officer stands in the courtyard to address Chun Xiao and Li Yuyu, flanked by medical personnel. He explains that construction starts immediately, but because some of the installations involve classified military technology, they will prefabricate the core modules at their base and transport them to the site for final assembly. Our protagonist looks at the officer with his signature red eyes and gives the green light without hesitation. When the officer curiously asks about Li Yuyu's identity, Chun Xiao dismisses the inquiry by labeling her a resident who is simply acting as his secretary for the day. With that settled, the military officer gestures toward the building and officially declares the fortress retrofitting project underway. Work begins as engineers consult detailed blueprints and cranes start lifting massive, high-tech solar arrays toward the roof. The officer explains with intense enthusiasm that these specific panels are 10 times more durable than the original setup and offer triple the energy storage and thermal conversion efficiency of standard models. Our boy listens closely and instructs Li Yuyu to note these specifications down on her clipboard. The upgrades continue with the installation of a military-grade backup generator. The officer points out that this industrial system can keep the entire building powered even through long stretches of overcast weather. As workers use heavy drills that send sparks flying, the officer highlights the third item on the list, exterior walls reinforced with composite armor plating. He grins with excitement while describing the material as bulletproof, fireproof, and thermally insulated, claiming it is strong enough to make even a monster tremble. While the officer laughs hysterically at the sheer scale of the defense, Chun Xiao and Li Yuyu watch him with flat expressions, and the secretary wonders why the soldier is more excited about the fortress than they are. The military team then secures massive reinforced metal doors and installs blast-proof systems to control access to the structure. On the ceilings, they mount high-tech security cameras featuring automated target recognition software and finish the exterior with an independent satellite communication module. On the roof, a large satellite dish now stands over the complex. This massive spectacle draws the attention of the residents, including Grandpa Wang, who watches the construction in disbelief while holding his coffee. Lin Jing and Aling stand in the courtyard looking up in awe, with the young girl remarking that they are finally turning into a secret base, while Lin Jing feels like she is living in a dream. Meanwhile, Mu Chang watches the transformation through a window with a worried, sweating face. The focus then shifts to a military laboratory where scientists examine data on a computer monitor. A female scientist notes that our hero's body temperature, heart rate, and cellular activity are drastically different from a normal human's, suggesting his body is constantly adapting to extreme external environments. The military officer demands an explanation in plain English. The scientist explains their hypothesis that the disaster isn't just a simple heat wave. Instead, abnormal solar activity and magnetic disturbances are releasing anomalous energy into the biosphere. This stress is forcing a portion of the population to undergo adaptive mutations, which the male scientist clarifies is the actual source of awakened abilities. The officer realizes this means humans won't be the only ones mutating in the future, and turns to find Chen Xiao standing behind him. Because our hero has already seen other awakeners, he isn't surprised or scared by the news. He smirks and casually reveals to the officer that there is an organization called the Ark that is currently recruiting superpowered individuals. He mentions that he declined their invitation because he had no interest in joining them. This information causes the officer to worry, as he realizes another faction is competing with the military for the young mage's loyalty. As this discussion concludes, a female military technician sits at a computer desk staring at her monitor. She feels like she recognizes a face in the background of the surveillance footage. After pausing a video of Mu Chang standing next to the protagonist, she pulls up a personnel file. The document reveals that Mu Chang is actually a man named a high-risk defector from the armament department who has been missing for some time. Because cellular activity is continuing to climb within his body, a scientist at a military medical facility concludes that our hero possesses the unique physique of a true awakener. Chen Xiao sits on a metal examination table while these tests finish, eventually asking if they have gathered enough information. The military officer confirms the data is sufficient, allowing our boy to hop off the table and head toward the exit. While the commander offers an escort for the trip back, the situation shifts abruptly when a smartphone begins buzzing. After answering the call, the officer's expression darkens, and he immediately orders Chen Xiao to stop. The military officer walks up to our protagonist and holds out the phone to display a digital personnel file for a man named Wang Anchao. The photo reveals a stern, short-haired version of Mu Chang, labeled as a high-risk missing target. Although Chen Xiao is surprised by the different vibe his associate gives off in the military photo, he maintains a cold and narrowed gaze. The commander wastes no time with small talk, explaining that this man is a wanted fugitive who has been seen entering and exiting the residential building with our boy. He demands that the young mage hand over the fugitive immediately, promising that the other residents will be kept out of the trouble if he complies. When our hero dismisses the demand, the officer becomes aggressive and declares that he has a direct order to bring the man in. He warns that the young mage isn't going anywhere, which prompts several armed soldiers in the lab to raise their rifles at our protagonist. Because negotiations have clearly failed, Chen Xiao raises his hand and summons a swirling aura of spatial energy. A dark portal completely consumes his silhouette, allowing him to vanish from the room instantly. This leaves the soldiers and their commander staring at the empty space in total shock. Furious that the target escaped, the officer orders an immediate suspension of the Fortress project and mobilizes all armed forces to subdue Chen Xiao and capture the fugitive. Back at the apartment building, the atmosphere turns tense as Grandpa Wang notices the construction work has suddenly stopped. Nearby, Mu Chang senses that something is wrong and begins checking his handgun for a potential fight. His instincts are proven right when he spots soldiers rappelling down the side of the building toward his floor. As the military smashes through the glass windows, the building's automated defense system detects the breach and activates. This results in massive arcs of yellow electricity blasting the intruders, sending the soldiers flying backward with agonizing screams. In another part of the building, Lin Jing hears the commotion and tries to open her window, but she finds it sealed tight. A warning begins instructing her to remain in her room while defense protocols are active. Grandpa Wang quickly pulls Aling away from the windows to find a safer area as the courtyard fills with smoke and gas from military launchers. A massive explosion rocks the side of the complex, forcing the old man and the girl to take cover under a heavy table. Grandpa Wang is deeply confused as to why the soldiers who were just helping them are now attacking. Aling begins to fear that something terrible has happened to her big brother. However, the tension breaks when Chen Xiao suddenly reappears on a lower ledge of the building. He stands as a silent silhouette overlooking the military forces below, signaling to the terrified girl that he is back to defend his home. Curious as to the noise outside, several neighbors rush to their windows, only to see the military right at their doorstep, their entire building surrounded. Chen Xiao, with a murderous stare, warned the soldiers not to dare attack his complex. If they do, then they shouldn't blame him for not holding back. They immediately ceased fire, and since it was a residential area, the military officer told his men that they couldn't harm the innocent. However, if Chen Xiao still insists on sheltering a criminal, then there was nothing he can do about him but to withdraw all their military resources. That way, it was only a matter of time before his building collapses under the erosion of the extreme heat. Smirking, Chen Xiao asked if the lead officer really thought he wouldn't expect him to say that. With a casual wave of his hand, Chen Xiao unexpectedly took out several components for building renovations, surprising Grandpa Wang and amazing A Ling. But the military officer was gobsmacked to see the massive objects in Chen Xiao's possession. He couldn't comprehend just when the young mage got his hands on them. Chen Xiao just gave a slight chuckle and casually stated that the military's base was right next to the hospital, so he just happened to drop by on his way. Chen Xiao then declared that he would take the materials himself, and that was his rightful share. He would also handle the rest of the assembly himself. The soldiers felt that it was ridiculous and too reckless, and as for their lead officer, after assessing how Chen Xiao's spatial ability not only had a massive offensive ability, but also a strategic-level transport ability, he hesitates. He reminds Chen Xiao one more time that the high temperatures will continue to escalate, and when that time comes, the city will inevitably collapse. There would be a citywide chaos, fires, and riots. Furthermore, foreign forces have already begun to infiltrate, attempting to seize their country's precious resources. And to deal with all this and protect the safety of the citizens, the country is planning to implement an unprecedented, grandiose project named Project Firmament. Chen Xiao reiterated the name with an obvious curiosity, while Mu Chong listened with a worried expression. Apparently, this was a layered thermal insulation structure project, meaning the entire city would be sealed underground. Or simply put, people would live underground and can only look at the sky through an arc-shaped ceiling. They will build an underground living area insulated from the extreme heat, where all citizens will survive. People will be able to see the sky and sunlight, but will no longer be able to breathe the outside air or touch the outside sunlight. Returning to the surface will also be strictly prohibited. This project has a massive scope and a tight schedule. It's a race against the extreme heat, and for the sake of the citizens, they have to do it. The military officer then proposed another deal because this project requires Chen Xiao's spatial ability. And if he was willing to help, they would get twice the result with half the effort. But Chen Xiao's reply was unexpected, declaring that it sounds like a lot of trouble. The military officer was shocked upon hearing this as Chen Xiao continued. He added that a moment ago the military officer wanted to arrest his people, but was now asking him to help him with this and that. Wasn't that a bit too self-centered? They rolled up in his complex with all these vehicles, pointing their cannons at him, yet demanding for help. Seriously, was this the attitude of someone asking for help? If people don't mess with him, he doesn't mess with them. But if they don't get lost, he would overturn even their headquarters. The military officer reasoned for Chen Xiao to calm down for a few days. He would come back to find him when the time was right. He told his men to retreat. And just like that, this confrontation was suddenly over, surprising Lin Jing. Mu Chong was deep in thoughts, worried that Wu Xiaotian had really gone that far already. A while later during nightfall, a knock sounded on Chen Xiao's apartment, and upon letting the person inside, Mu Chong walked in with a grim expression. He had decided to tell Chen Xiao everything he knew. A tense silence stretched out for a bit before Mu Chong recounts the story. He stated that he used to belong to the armament department. Chen Xiao said nothing and just listened silently. You see, during a dispatch, Mu Chong discovered an anomaly in the flow of a batch of weapons. Furthermore, those things weren't ordinary weapons. Instead, they were core technologies designed for extreme high-temperature environments. And the recipients were foreign powers. Mu Chong originally wanted to expose this matter, but as a result, he became the one who was arrested. Therefore, he escaped at that time, taking a portion of the armaments with him. That's how he got the arms he sold to Chen Xiao. So that's how it is, Chen Xiao thought to himself. And that batch of equipment traded abroad was highly likely the core equipment for Project Firmament. Mu Chong was about to reveal what the Project Firmament actually was when Chen Xiao noticed something outside. As he moved towards the apartment window, Mu Chong curiously questioned what was going on, and Chen Xiao replied that someone was watching them. Right outside the apartment complex, a white-haired woman confidently made her appearance known, coldly staring right back at Chen Xiao through his apartment window. Mu Chong was stunned that the white-haired woman managed to break directly into their backyard without triggering the alarm. He then curiously wondered who she was. Chen Xiao simply stated that he would go meet her. So in a blink of an eye, Chen Xiao made his way behind her. The white-haired lady turned slightly, and with a sly smile, stated that she was glad they finally got to meet. Though Chun Xiao's alarm system was pathetically lax, so slipping in silently was a piece of cake. Chun Xiao asked who she was, but instead of a reply, the white-haired lady gave a dossier of Chun Xiao. His name, age, being an only child, originally from Luocheng, graduated from Luocheng High School, and went out to work before finishing university. Chun Xiao was indifferent and just wanted the lady to get to the point. She finally introduced herself as Elisa, adding that she was someone who knew Chun Xiao even better than his country military. Chun Xiao pointed out that in this day and age it was simple to dock someone. But what was her goal anyway, because his patience was limited? Elisa informed Chun Xiao that she wasn't there to fight. Chun Xiao was building a shelter, right? It was a good idea. But how long can a shelter like his apartment complex last in the apocalypse? He should already know about Project Firmament. It was a great plan that can change the destiny of humanity. Chun Xiao gave nothing away, and simply praised how great of a plan the project was. Elisa replied that things weren't that simple as they seemed, because that project can only allow a portion of people to survive. Though this might seem shocking, and Chun Xiao feigned being that to perfection, it wasn't that much of a secret if thought through. And Chun Xiao would know just by thinking about it. How could an underground settlement accommodate so many humans? It was already insufficient just for the people in this country. Therefore, once the project was completed, a culling of humanity will inevitably take place. When that time comes, the poor with neither power nor influence will become the first to be abandoned. Chun Xiao, with an expression of indifference, asked what that had to do with Elisa approaching him. Elisa proposed Chun Xiao cooperate with her country M. Only their country M would find a way to save all of humanity from this misery, leaving no one behind. They were exactly the saviors needed, and she was exactly the agent representing country M there to contact Chun Xiao. Furthermore, she knows the military had already invited him to participate in Project Firmament. Resources, technology, intelligence. Elisa hopes Chun Xiao can secretly provide all the information about this project to them. Hearing this, Chun Xiao questioned Elisa if she wants him to betray his country. And this bitch had the nerve to reply that it would be about saving all of humanity. So he shouldn't worry and needed to understand this simple task. They would provide everything Chun Xiao wanted. Money, status, and even if Chun Xiao wanted her. Though this sounds very tempting, Chun Xiao neither agreed to this nor disagreed. And Elisa, who presumed Chun Xiao had agreed to be their mole, stated seductively that she just loves sensible guys like him. So why don't they have some fun tonight? But to her disappointment, Chun Xiao suddenly slapped her hand off his chest and yelled that he disliked being used as a pawn. Elisa's face darkened as she cursed out loud. She then took out a gun and aimed it at Chun Xiao. So under the silent night on Chun Xiao's apartment complex, Elisa pulled the trigger, firing a modified bullet which tore through the air with a purple energy. Chun Xiao simply raised his hand and opened a spatial portal which seemed to swallow the bullet effortlessly. With a mocking smile, he asked Elisa if that was all. Elisa gave a slight chuckle, not at all fazed by this outcome. After all, it was actually expected from a spatial ability user. However, this was exactly her purpose. Elisa quickly wore some sort of evaluation gadget and explained that getting the data on Chun Xiao's spatial ability was her real purpose. But upon her evaluation, Elisa was utterly astonished to find out that Chun Xiao's ability was like a black hole, extremely large to evaluate. Meanwhile, in a mocking tone, Chun Xiao asked Elisa about her findings. After all, the harvest from that church incident before wasn't small, which gave him the possibility to strengthen his spatial ability. You see, back when Chun Xiao dismantled the cultist, a system notification showed that the believer's breakdown, fear, despair, and negative emotion had even exceeded 99.99. Instead of being frightened, Elisa marveled at Chun Xiao's ability, claiming it was beautiful. But Chun Xiao really didn't like being spied on like that. So upon the release of the true scope of his abilities, Elisa was suddenly drenched in cold sweat. At first glance, it seemed like a giant blood eye stood behind Chun Xiao. But in actuality, it was one of many blood eyes and several maws of a giant beast. Chun Xiao teasingly told a kneeling Elisa that peeping into other people's secrets was not a good habit. Staring at Chun Xiao with a cold gaze, Elisa cursed and decided to retreat. She created a smoke screen to cover her tracks and disappeared without a trace, but told Chun Xiao that they would definitely meet again. Although Chun Xiao's ability had been exposed, he remained unbothered. He was simply annoyed with how exhausting the trouble would be from now on. Meanwhile, at dawn, neighbors rushed towards their windows, curious as to what the sudden commotion outside was. When the contractors appeared on site and saw the heavy machinery and equipment, they suddenly felt nervous, stating that they've never seen stuff like that before. When they asked what they were, Liu Yu told them not to ask. They should just align and install them as expected. Chen Xiao was pleased with Liu Yu, thinking that it was expected from his top classmate. She learned what needed to be done just by taking a few looks. Within a couple of days, the Doomsday Fortress was completed. And as the team watched with a sense of accomplishment, especially Chen Xiao, he couldn't wait to test the fortress's power. Elsewhere within a luxurious mansion, Elisa knelt before her master and reported that her persuasion had failed. Her mysterious master was cuddling a black cat, and behind him was the bitch, Lu Wangqing. Yeah, she was surprisingly alive and was latching on to a new host like a parasite. Lu Wangqing pointed out that it was like she said earlier. Chen Xiao was the kind of person who can't be persuaded, and their only way forward was getting rid of him. Although this mysterious master was not from this country, he really liked it there. The people there were hardworking, smart, and wise. But Chen Xiao seemed not to be the case. It was just a pity that talents that cannot be used by him were the biggest hidden danger. Though killing Chen Xiao directly would be considered too gentle, he would rather let him have a better and entertaining way to die. Back at Chen Xiao's side, Liu Yu, on the city streets, was deep in thoughts. Apparently, logistics were unavailable at the moment, and to buy supplies they can only trade offline. Liu Yu was utterly absent-minded that she never realized someone was secretly approaching her from behind. And by the time she finally did, it was too late. In an effortless manner, this hooded person placed her in a chokehold till she inevitably passed out. By the time she eventually came to, she was tied up in an abandoned warehouse with Lu Wangqing watching over her. She asked Liu Yu if she was a bit more clear-headed now. With an amused expression, Lu Wangqing first raised Liu Yu's head by the chin, then inspected her figure before commenting that it wasn't bad. Fully aware that Liu Yu was the woman by her ex-boyfriend's side, Lu Wangqing was also annoyed by this since she believed she shouldn't lose to this woman either. Liu Yu woke up and replied with a contemptuous tone, recalling Lu Wangqing as Chen Xiao's ex-girlfriend. And now she had captured her, planning on getting revenge on him. Lu Wangqing gave a slight chuckle and confirmed this assessment. But she would give Liu Yu a chance to live. And all she needed to do was to trick Chen Xiao into coming to the abandoned warehouse. As a reward, her life would be spared. Liu Yu, upon hearing this, asked what Lu Wangqing planned on doing. Did she think arranging some third-rate traps or something will be enough to handle Chen Xiao? But that was none of Liu Yu's concern. Lu Wangqing brushed her off. She just needed to tell her directly whether she was willing or not. Liu Yu replied that she didn't even need to think about it. She was unwilling. And she would fill Lu Wangqing in on a secret. There was a tracker on her. So the very moment her movements became abnormal, Chen Xiao was immediately alerted. Lu Wangqing feigned being caught off guard for a second there, before giving off a hearty laugh meant to mock Liu Yu. So what if Chen Xiao knows? As long as she's able to lure him out of that broken fortress, her goal will be achieved. But before that, she would enjoy torturing Liu Yu thoroughly. In that moment, two musclemen approach her with malicious intent. Liu Yu, upon seeing this, instantly understood what Lu Wangqing meant and was overwhelmed with fear. Closing her eyes, she suddenly began to cry bitterly. But before the two musclemen could get close, a deafening explosion sounded, causing a now frightened Lu Wangqing to turn in fear, only to see a freaking tank barging into the abandoned warehouse. And leading the charge was the military officer, who ordered his men to get everyone present under control. Lu Wangqing was soon apprehended, and a dazed Liu Yu was still unable to comprehend why the military was there. The military officer replied that Chen Xiao contacted him yesterday and they came to an agreement. Now, protecting the residents of the Doomsday Fortress was his mission. Nearby, Lu Wangqing, upon hearing that this was Chen Xiao's doing, gritted her teeth in anger and with resentment. But with all the targets neutralized, the military officer gave the order for them to be taken away. He then informed Chen Xiao, who was still inside his Doomsday Fortress, that Liu Yu was fine and everything was under control. Chen Xiao reminded him to remember their conditions, which was protecting his people in exchange for his cooperation, but under the premise that he would not be controlled by him. With a murderous look, Chen Xiao thought to himself that his premonition was right. Now that undercurrents are surging, hidden dangers would definitely affect the people around him. But as of now, the military had also become one of his chess pieces. And with this, the situation had reversed. Back to the military, as they transport Lu Wangqing and her goons to a containment, she couldn't help recalling what had happened to her since Boss Lu's demise and the collapse of his base camp. Lu Wangqing wandered aimlessly for a while until her body inevitably gave out, shaking involuntarily as she dropped on the streets. And in her hazy gaze, she saw three dark figures looming over her. When Lu Wangqing asked who they were, the three said nothing and simply dragged her away as she begged to be freed. Lu Wangqing, along with 4 other people, were brought in front of 3 men sitting in a luxurious chair and impeccable suits. When the one in the middle, cuddling a cat, gave the command for them to begin, Lu Wangqing and the rest bolted for their lives. But after the trial was over, Lu Wangqing was the only survivor and was deemed qualified by the mysterious awakened leader. Lu Wangqing was taken into a lab, experimented on, and survived as an awakened human. Back to the present, Lu Wangqing, with a smug smile, mocked the military for believing a simple handcuff could hold her. Her hands quickly dissolved into jelly-like water as she freed herself, and under the confused and watchful gaze of the military guards, Lu Wangqing's entire body dissolved afterwards and disappeared without a trace. Back to Chen Xiao, Lin Jing informed him that the Pure Water Society's water has mostly been handed out, and the goods they sold off were used to support the families of the dead. She then asked Chen Xiao if it was really okay. Chen Xiao had no issue with it. After all, those supplies were offerings from the cult followers in the first place, and he was just returning them to their rightful owners. And besides, he doesn't eat blood-soaked buns. Chen Xiao also liked to sleep well at night. Lin Jing gave a bright smile and replied that that's exactly Chen Xiao's style. Meanwhile, in a faucet within the apartment, tiny droplets trickled into its wash basin, then slowly formed into Lu Wangqing's figure. But Chen Xiao, upon seeing her, was initially surprised before teasing the bitch who still hadn't kicked the bucket yet. Chen Xiao raised his hand and quickly began gathering spatial energy. But Lu Wangqing just laughed and stated that she knew Chen Xiao's ability like the back of her hand. Now, she would make sure he and his little plaything die together. Lu Wangqing turned into a puddle of thick water, and as she launched towards Chen Xiao, he countered with his spatial energy, but it was ineffective. Chen Xiao then opened his spatial portal to contain Lu Wangqing, but to his horror, she seemed to have phased through it and slammed him into his apartment wall. Worried, Lin Jing rushed to his side and asked if he was okay. Looking at Chen Xiao's battered state, Lu Wangqing gave a crazed laugh and explained that the water flow was her own transformed body, and it seemed Chen Xiao's space can't carry living things, meaning his ability was useless against her. Chen Xiao was dead for sure today. With glee, Lu Wangqing watched as Lin Jing kept fussing if Chen Xiao was okay. But he said nothing and simply raised his hand once more. But this time around, he retaliated with a long-range spatial slash. And although the strike cleaved Lu Wangqing's transformed body in half, she healed effortlessly within a split second, shocking Chen Xiao, who immediately grew uneasy. Lu Wangqing pointed out the obvious. Chen Xiao's attacks are useless on her when she was in water form, and since he made her life a living hell, she would make him atone. Lu Wangqing, in her water form, launched towards Chen Xiao, but he raised his hand and erected a spatial spherical barrier, separating them from Lu Wangqing. But to his horror once again and Lin Jing's shocked expression, Lu Wangqing's water form easily penetrated the barrier. Lu Wangqing created a water bubble around both Chen Xiao and Lin Jing's head, suffocating them. She reminded her ex how she'd already told him his little tricks won't work on him. This was her ultimate move. And although she doesn't casually use it on ordinary people, after all, for her, this counts as direct physical contact. But since it was the two of them, she's got nothing to hold back for. One was an adorable little girl, and the other was her ex-boyfriend. With a crazed laugh, Lu Wangqing asked if they were hurting. She then declared that what they were feeling now wasn't even a tenth of what she went through. Not only did Chen Xiao refuse to take her with him, he even killed his backer, leaving her destitute on the streets, getting passed around by vagrants every night. But she crawled back from hell. Chen Xiao forced her to shed her skin and become truly strong, so she should actually thank him. Chen Xiao found Lu Wangqing's excessive chattering quite irritating. Lin Jing activated her forced heat dissipation ability, and it immediately took effect, surprising the shit out of Lu Wangqing. But Lin Jing explained that since this water was also part of Lu Wangqing's body, her ability works on her. Pissed off, Lu Wangqing yelled for Lin Jing to stop. What the hell did she think she was doing? If Lin Jing was willing to freeze her own head, that's her problem. But why the hell did she have to freeze her also? Lin Jing gave a self-deprecating laugh and revealed that she was just a distraction. And freezing her was a means to allow Chen Xiao, who had now activated his spatial slash after freeing himself, to slice the frozen ice around Lin Jing's head. Lu Wangqing was stunned that Chen Xiao was not afraid of hurting his woman's brain. But as Lin Jing rushed towards Chen Xiao's side, he replied that they had their own implicit understanding. However, this time around, he would be the one to personally send this bitch on her way. Then, with their tacit cooperation, Lin Jing froze Lu Wangqing and Chen Xiao sliced her into bits, killing her. He told Lin Jing that it was over. Meanwhile, back at the mansion of Lu Wangqing's mysterious benefactor, he instantly realized that she'd failed. And after a brief silence, he gave a menacing smile and stated that it was time to get serious. After all, He and his men were becoming restless. A while later inside the mansion, the mysterious young master, whose name still remained unknown, posed a question to his awakened men. After a quick meal, he asked for their option on self-awareness, a dilemma for these ignorant awakeners he intended on enlightening. He questioned if their entire body were replaced and only their brain remained, then would they still be themselves? And if not, then where did their original selves go? The awakeners looked at each other with no clear answer in sight. They got no clue what the hell their master was spouting, so he continued, explaining that maybe humans never had a true self at all. What humans call consciousness was just a pre-written illusion. Setting aside his remaining dish, he declared that he had seen through everything and willingly chose to follow desire. Only desire brings real pleasure, deeming it the only way to affirm one's self. As the group were told to leave, the blonde guy of the four asked the rest whether they also noticed the meat their boss had just consumed. There was something ominous about it, so they head to the kitchen to have a look. But what they found left everyone deeply shaken. The blonde even wanted to throw up. The leader in green points out that it was high time they left. Apparently, they've been prioritized in taking out Chun Shao. Meanwhile, elsewhere at the infamous ARC organization base, inside, a middle-aged man in glasses told an awakened Wen-Hu that he already warned him not to stir up trouble. Wen-Hu coldly replied that it wasn't his concern. All he knows is, anyone who dares to mess with him, even if they're the biggest gang in town, he is not afraid of them. Glasses Man gave a sigh and pointed out that now that Wen-Hu had wiped out the local snake in Wanging City, the fragile power balance there was shattered, and things will only get more chaotic. However, it was alright, but Wen-Hu needed to understand one thing. At present, Awakeners were roughly ranked S, A, B, C. In Huaxia, counting Wen-Hu and him, there were only 5 known S-class Awakeners. Every move Wen-Hu makes represents not just ARC, but the face of all Awakeners, so he should show some respect. Visibly pissed off, Wen-Hu asked of Chun Shao, but Glasses Man folded his arms and once again pointed out the obvious. Wen-Hu came to Luo City specifically for Chun Shao, didn't he? Wen-Hu didn't argue with this assessment, but told Glasses Man to cut the crap and just answer him. Glasses Man remained silent for a while, before revealing that Chun Shao wasn't in the usual ranking system. An obvious shock flashed in Wen-Hu's eyes as Glasses Man continued. From what they know, while some Awakeners haven't fully developed their powers, most people's abilities basically settle after a few uses. But Chun Shao was different. His ability keeps evolving, and it still shows signs of further evolution. Power-ups of that scale were far beyond a normal ability. To him, Chun Shao was probably someone who surpasses an S-class altogether. And while this assessment might sound alarming, in Wen-Hu's eyes, it had only gotten simpler. Chun Shao was a potential threat, far superseding anything they can think of. Hence, it's either he becomes their ally, or they eliminate him as soon as possible. With his glasses taken off, Chun Shirshing told Wen-Hu he was rushing the process. And besides, Chun Shao hasn't fully awakened yet. But this was precisely why this was the best time for his elimination. Wen-Hu pointed this out casually. If another faction gets him first, ARC's great goal might never be realized. Panicked, Chun Shirshing feared this would just push Chun Shao to the opposite side. But Wen-Hu remained unbothered, saying that Chun Shirshing couldn't stop him. Their world didn't need wildcards. Then, as a red flame ignited from Wen-Hu's hand, he coldly declared that he would personally finish off Chun Shao before he fully awakened. Meanwhile, Chun Shirshing couldn't help wondering how things ended up from Chun Shao's recruitment to his elimination. As the scene shifted to the Doomsday Fortress, the 4 group Awakeners approached and boldly declared that today was Chun Shao's death day. Coincidentally, Wen-Hu also appeared in that very moment, somewhat surprised to see a group Awakeners actually there for Chun Shao. There was also an Awakener among them that has an ability similar to his. When the group asked who Wen-Hu was, the Fire Mage confidently declared that Chun Shao was his prey, so small fries like them shouldn't waste their lives. Cursing, the leader of the group was furious that Wen-Hu dared to talk big alone in front of them. They were the most successful Awakeners under their young master. He then instructed the entire group to bury Wen-Hu together. But as the group charged forward, they got wasted by a single wave of Wen-Hu's hand. He didn't even need to use his ability. After taking care of the entire group of Awakeners, Wen-Hu approached Old Man Wang, who curiously asked who he was looking for. Wen-Hu replied that he was searching for Chun Shao. Old Man Wang told him that Chun Shao wasn't there. He went to the shopping street to buy things. Wen-Hu, upon hearing this, gave a sly smile and immediately bid his farewell to Old Man Wang. He even told him to take care of his health. Old Man Wang thought Wen-Hu was a nice young man, but unbeknownst to him, Wen-Hu gave a cold sneer and stated that if Old Man Wang had lied, he would have torn him into pieces. Meanwhile, at Chun Shao's side, Ailing and Yu had accompanied him. Ailing pointed at an item in a shop and expressed her desire to have it. Recalling that Ailing's electric ability only works when she was in a good mood, Chunxiao teased her for lying, claiming that kids who lie get dragged away by ghosts. Yet Ailing still claimed she hadn't lied. With a slight laugh, Yu then suggests they go buy some more items. The three soon stumble across an amusement park on the way, where a guide invited them with a smile, thinking they were a happy family of three. They could come in and make some fun memories. Chunxiao immediately corrected the old man, telling him that they weren't a family. But just as he said this, Ailing, who couldn't hide her excitement, called him dad and expressed her desire to ride the Ferris wheel. Hearing this, Chunxiao's soul almost left his body. He yelled for Ailing to quit with her nonsense. Who the hell was she calling dad? Yu, on the other hand, couldn't help laughing at this sight. She then asked the old man if the park was really still open at a time like this. The old guy confirmed this, explaining that precisely because the world has become like this, people should enjoy themselves even more. Shouldn't they? Who knows, this might be humanity's last chance to play in an amusement park. Immediately, Ailing rushed inside, telling the two she was heading in first. Yu suggests Chunxiao go play with Ailing for a while. She was still just a kid and should be playing with children her own age. She, on the hand, would go gather supplies elsewhere first. Meanwhile, on the other side of the streets opposite the amusement park, Manhwa, who had been searching for Chunxiao for quite some time, briefly thought Old Man Wang had lied to him. And as he turned his head from side to side, he noticed Yu walking by, oblivious to his presence. But Manhwa knew Yu as Chunxiao's woman, always around him, meaning his target was definitely nearby. It didn't take long for him to spot Chunxiao riding the Ferris wheel with Ailing. Pleased with himself, Manhwa leaped onto the very top of a high-rise building overlooking the entire amusement park, watching Chunxiao with a menacing glee. Meanwhile, Chunxiao and Ailing were clueless about this and hadn't even noticed Manhwa's presence until he made a move. He flew directly from where he stood to the Ferris wheel the two were at. It was then that Chunxiao noticed and immediately shielded Ailing after erecting a spatial barrier, though the glass window of the cabin was shattered. As Manhwa hovered in front of them, Chunxiao questioned who he was. Manhwa simply replied that he was there to kill him. He scoffed disdainfully, stating that a mere barrier wasn't enough to do anything to him. Manhwa began bombarding the barrier with his fists, which eventually caused it to crack. Seeing this, Manhwa gathered a massive punch and struck the cabin. The impact threw Chunxiao and Ailing wayward, but Chunxiao was quick to open a spatial portal to which he was thrown right through. He appeared on the ground near the Ferris wheel, but Ailing was unfortunate and was captured by Manhwa, who quickly noticed that Chunxiao's teleportation ability couldn't move living beings other than himself. He demanded Chunxiao kill himself now, or he would toss Ailing down. Dangling a flinging Ailing in the air, Manhwa urged Chunxiao for an answer. Was he going to watch Ailing splatter on the ground, or kill himself? He only get one choice. Curious, Chunxiao asked why Manhwa was so fixed on killing him. He doesn't recall having any grudges with Manhwa. Manhwa gave a cold laugh and replied that the answer was simple. He hates things that don't follow the rules and people who don't play by common sense. And unfortunate for Chunxiao, he was both. Manhwa then recounted Old Chen's assessment on Chunxiao, informing his target of how he was evaluated as an awakener above S-class. If a guy like Chunxiao wasn't eliminated, it really puts him, Manhwa, in a bad mood. And more importantly, Chunxiao had gotten in the way of Ark's ideals. Realizing this as Ark's doing, Chunxiao immediately rendered the entire organization as an enemy for that point forth. On the other hand, Manhwa, relishing in Chunxiao's predicament, added that their organization's goal was to create a world ruled by awakeners. For that ideal, every troublemaker had to be ripped out by the roots. Though Chunxiao figured as much, having finally gotten this confirmation of Ark's goal, his face darkened. Manhwa decided to give Chunxiao 30 more seconds, and if he still refused to choose, Ailing dies. At this point, Ailing, crying bitterly, yelled for Manhwa to let her go. Chunxiao had no desire to kill himself for someone else, and he made Manhwa aware of this, laying it out straight. Hearing Chunxiao's choice, Manhwa deemed him as a cold-blooded man. He told a crying Ailing that she picked the wrong guy to trust. Throwing caution to the wind, Ailing began flinging with her electric ability on full display, yelling for Manhwa to let her down. Realizing that Ailing was an awakener too, Manhwa deemed it a shame before letting go of her. In her next life, she shouldn't trust rotten men like Chunxiao. Ailing plummeted with a hoarse scream, believing her end was near. Chunxiao swiftly dished out a spatial portal directly below Ailing, and from within, a high-tech passenger drone came forth as Ailing's small figure fell onto it. The drone smoothly flew away as Ailing, relieved and excited to be alive, praised how cool the experience was. But this left a sour taste in one whose mouth, comparable to being slapped in the face. He yelled for the little brat not to get cocky. One who gathered 2 massive flames in his hands and aimed it at the drone. A deafening blast reverberated throughout the park sky as Chun Xiao yelled for A-Ling to grab the drone's lever and release her electricity. A-Ling immediately did as she was told, shooting out 2 massive beams of electricity to which one who used his red flames to block. A mushroom cloud of dark smoke rose as A-Ling drove the drone off, amazed that she did it and also claiming it was so fun. Chun Xiao urgently told her that fun time was over. They needed to head home right now. As the dark mushroom cloud of smoke gradually subsided, one who walked out with a severely injured eye and a couple of bruises. Yet this deranged awakener was excited, deeming Chun Xiao as a man worthy of him using his true strength against. The scene soon shifted to the mansion of the mysterious young master, where a researcher knelt before him, reporting that the entire group they sent out had been wiped out. Indifferent to this report, the young master was even pleased that he'd finally gotten an outcome for his research. And although this outcome might have seemed obvious from the beginning, he needed a definitive results, which was that artificially created awakeners do have their limits after all. And since this was the case, then there was no further need for artificial awakeners. Elisa followed her young master to the lab where awakeners were manufactured. This was Elisa's first time entering the lab, so she felt uneasy seeing an array of large test tubes containing several dormant state awakeners. As the young master scoffed at the products his researchers call their successful products, Elisa was about to reason with her boss to spare them. However, her words died in her throat the very moment he pressed a red button, initiating their self-destruction sequence. He claimed that if they can't even complete their missions, they were failures, and failures had no reason to exist. All the awakeners in their stasis pod began to convulse, their veins bulging out like they were about to pop. As the two silently watched the products self-destruct, the young master said in a cold tone, "Humanity was always obsessed with the wrong path of evolution, and since forced awakening didn't work, then he would let nature sift out the strong." The biochemical virus project was based on the experimental results of a researcher named Lin Guodong. They refined his work and obtained this outcome. Now there was no need to rely on drugs or physical modification. They would just let the virus spread and let it filter out the strongest humans. Those who survived despair were the only ones worthy of becoming the new species. In the end, they only need to subject them to brain machine control, and they would be the perfect army. Elisa was inwardly horrified because there was no way a normal person could come up with a plan like this. Doing this wasn't saving humanity at all. Back then, she shot a camera-equipped bullet into Chun Xiao's space, and what she saw was an indescribable horror. It wasn't an ability, but the embodiment of all negative human emotions gathered into one. Chun Xiao was definitely a being beyond awakeners, but maybe only he can stop this deranged demon. Anyway, since this awakener project failed, the young master planned on leaving the cleanup to Elisa. He also instructed Elisa to kill the researcher behind this project because he was no longer of any use. Elisa agreed with a slight nod, before taking the guy deep into a nearby forest to dispose of. But when it was time to pull the trigger, Elisa deliberately missed and told the guy to get out of there. The farther he runs, the better, and he shouldn't let anyone recognize him if he can help it. From the very beginning, the researcher had long since expected it would end like this. The guy then pulled out a gun of his own, shocking Elisa, who asked what the hell he was doing. But surprisingly, he placed the gun against his head and thanked Elisa for her kindness. But if they find out he ran, it won't just be him dragged down, but the Lee couple would also be implicated. And besides, their research was this world's only hope. Elisa still tried to stop the guy, but he pulled the trigger without hesitation, ending his life. Elisa thought it was foolish, but then again, all of these researchers are stubbornly pig-headed. The scene soon shifted inside Chun Xiao's apartment inside the Doomsday's fortress. A-Ling was happy playing video games as Chun Xiao, recalling that Yu Yu's parents had vanished out of nowhere, asked her if she still hadn't heard any word from them. Yu Yu replied that she'd gotten nothing after asking around. Chun Xiao remembered Yu Yu's parents were pretty wealthy, and with such disappearance like that out of the blue, it was just too strange. Yu Yu revealed that her only lead she had at present was a magazine in their room, but the cover was too blurry to make out. She was fully aware that her parents had never read that kind of thing, hence why she came to that conclusion. Chun Xiao immediately recognized that precise magazine was mainly about Benjamin, a multinational tycoon with stakes in multiple high-tech companies. He couldn't help wondering if Yu Yu's parents' disappearance was connected to the guy. Yu Yu doubted this, explaining that Benjamin was based in Country M. So how would he even have anything to do with her parents? And besides, her parents were just ordinary researchers. Yu Yu just didn't even know whether her parents were alive or dead. Chun Xiao remained silent, offering little comfort. Back on Elisa's side, she paid a visit to the Li couple. When she tried to inform them about what had transpired, Professor Li, preoccupied and impatient, asked her to spit it out already. Elisa told the two that researcher Lin was dead. Hearing this, Mrs. Li turned towards Elisa with a look of astonishment, as Mr. Li stated that Xiao Lin had been with them for so many years. Yet such a hard-working young man had died. He also recalled that Xiao Lin always said his dream was to buy his parents a seaside apartment. Mr. Li promised to deliver everything their boss need right on schedule. And in exchange, they hope when the time comes, the boss wouldn't forget his promise. The Li couple yearns to go home and reunite with their daughter. Meanwhile, Elisa, deeply moved, asked the two if they wish to live, and they quickly replied that they do. After all, wasn't that the whole reason they were doing any of this? To make it back alive. Hearing this, Elisa's next words made them aware of the harsh reality. Knowing her young master's nature, even if they complete the experiment, he would never let them go. However, she can get them out of there. Mr. Lin quickly asked what Elisa was scheming. Soon, as Elisa took her leave, the security team noticed her dragging her feet and told her to quit with her delay tactics. At the door, Elisa swiftly turned and fired 2 shots, killing the 2 security guards. When the Li couple saw this, Elisa told them to stop hesitating and follow. Do they want to see their daughter or not? It was that simple. The Li couple insisted that they had to take their research, which happens to be a rainbow-colored cube, with them. This rainbow-colored cube was named the Angel's Heart, and the two revealed that it was the only hope they had in carving a safe haven in this apocalypse. Anyway, though Elisa was amazed to see the Angel's Heart, she didn't dwell on the matter and instructed the couple to move quickly. Time was of the essence. A minute later, the entire building was sent into a high-security alert. Lockdown was soon initiated as the armed guards rushed to the lab. An alarm blurred repeatedly, informing the building's security of the abnormality at the lab. And as these guards followed protocol, they soon encounter Elisa and the 2 researchers. Elisa yelled for them to get back and stay down. But the moment the guards saw that Elisa had betrayed them, they opened fire. But Elisa was faster, and before the guards could properly take aim, she dispatched them with 2 headshots, leaving only their team leader, who, for some reason, was immune to bullet attacks. They ricochet off his body like they were nothing. Shocked upon seeing this, Elisa curiously asked how. The team leader simply reached and tore open his shirt, revealing a high-tech mechanical body he was proud of. And to make matters even worse, the 2 guards she killed earlier also got up like lifeless corpse, disclosing the fact that they too had gone through the same process, remodeling their bodies. Their mechanical arm transformed into a gun as they declared Elisa as dead meat. Elisa's eyes widened with despair, but before they could open fire, Mr. Li hurled the Angel's Heart at the 3. Almost immediately, the 3 were rendered immobile, their mechanical arms and bodies becoming a cage entrapping them. With this brief window, Elisa told them to run because that little trick won't hold them for long. As the 3 head for the elevator, the young master watched them through the building's surveillance cameras. He was pissed that Elisa, one of his most trusted aide, had dared to betray him, and to steal the Angel's Heart on top of that, he vowed to make her pay for this. The 3 made it out of the building, hijack a vehicle as they were soon engaged in a high-speed chase. As the enemy gained up on them, Elisa told them to hold on tight. She then asked if the 2 had anyone in the city they can turn to. Professor Li replied that they don't, and if they had to name someone, it would be their daughter in Luo City. But they have been locked up so long that they don't even know if she was safe. Elisa pointed out that they were out of time. She then asked what their daughter's name was. Surprisingly, the couple's daughter was Li Yuyu. Elisa, upon hearing this name, found it sound so familiar, and it took a moment for her to remember. The files she read stated that Li Yuyu was one of Chun Xiao's companions too. Professor Li noticed Elisa's reaction and asked her if she knew their daughter. Was she alright? Elisa calmly replied that she didn't know her personally, but she was certain that she was doing more than alright. Inwardly, Elisa was pleased because it looks like she and Chun Xiao's fates really weren't done crossing yet. As the chase continues, Mrs. Li worriedly urged Elisa to do something. Their enemy was still on their tail, and if this keeps up, they would soon be surrounded. Elisa quickly calmed the 2, stating that Luo City was just up ahead, and once they were inside, they've got a shot. The vehicle soon barged through the toll booth, to which 2 military guards instructed them to pull over immediately for inspection. But the vehicle paid them no mind and drove away. As it rushed off, the 2 soldiers to suspect the identities of the middle-aged man and woman in the passenger and back seat. They were the missing Li couple, the scientists the military presumed had perished during the apocalypse. They yelled for the vehicle to stop, and as it did not, They radioed for all units to block the targeted vehicle. It soon became troublesome as Elisa maneuvered skillfully on the road ahead. Baffled, Professor Lee reasoned with Elisa to simply let the military check them. They could even protect them in the end. Elisa coldly replied that the young master had people planted in the army. So if they were the ones protecting them, they were as good as dead. As the vehicle slowly faded away from the enemy's grasp, another report soon alarmed the two soldiers and the military by extension. Thus, there was another armed convoy and 2 private helicopters behind the vehicle of the scientists. The military officer, unaware of the Lee couple, issued a command for all of them to be stopped. His men were to capture them alive or shoot on sight, with their priority being the protection zone. They shouldn't let any suspicious individuals get close. Meanwhile, at the protection zone, inside the Doomsday Fortress, Yu, having prepared a meal for her new family, served them with sheer delight. And as Ailing excitedly shouted that it was time to dig in, Mu Chong wept with joy. The ex-soldier didn't think they'd still be eating like this at a time like this. Yu replied cheerfully that this was the life they were supposed to have. But as they were about to dig in, a loud commotion right outside the fortress drew everyone's attention. Mu Chong was the first to rush towards the window, telling the group that something had happened outside. Chun Xiao immediately took out a pair of binoculars to have a look. He saw the female agent, Elisa, and although Chun Xiao didn't know why she was making such a scene, he was aware this was not her style. Also, it looks like there was another pair behind her, a middle-aged couple in white lab coats. Yu, upon hearing this, was immediately alarmed as she quickly snatched the pair of binoculars to have a look, and upon seeing that it was her parents, she began to tear up. Not only Mu Chong, but everyone was stunned to realize that those 2 couples were Yu's long-lost parents, and there was no doubt about it in Yu's eyes. They were indeed her parents, but it looks like they were in danger at the moment. Chun Xiao, upon hearing this, immediately activated his spatial teleportation and left the fortress, where Yu was still anxiously watching through the binoculars and didn't even respond when Chun Xiao gave a casual remark that it was time to pay her for the meal. The vehicle eventually came to an abrupt halt, kicking off a cloud of white smoke. And to Elisa's surprise, Chun Xiao suddenly appeared beside the vehicle and demanded she hand over the middle-aged couple. But Chun Xiao's surprise, Elisa rushed out of the vehicle, claiming his timing was perfect. She was just about to look for him, but she'd finally found him. Elisa hugged Chun Xiao like they were some star-crossed lovers, and it even took a moment for her to realize this and retreat sharply. She told Chun Xiao not to get the wrong idea. She wasn't his enemy right now. But when the Lee couple got out of the car, their main concern was whether their daughter was indeed residing with Chun Xiao. And if she was she all right? Where was she now? Chun Xiao told them that Yu was fine and was currently residing at his place, so there was no need to be anxious. They would be reunited very soon. The couple stare at each other with relief before the military suddenly appeared, instructing everybody to not move. Their officer, Captain Wu, immediately realized who the Lee couple were. He asked them if they were okay. Professor Lee explained to Captain Wu that Elisa was not their kidnapper. Rather, she was the one who saved them. Captain Wu was genuinely stunned, but before he could dwell on the matter, a chopper suddenly flew over the Doomsday Fortress, drawing everyone's attention, and with it, the young master's security team. With their target in sight, they moved in to retrieve the Lee couple and the Angel's heart. In that moment, Captain Wu had more or less got the situation. And the bottom line was that Elisa was not their enemy anymore, but the men in dark suits absolutely were. He told his men to prepare for combat. The 2 sides quickly opened fire with the military coming on top. And as for the chopper in the sky, Chun Xiao swiftly deemed it as his. So with minimum effort, he created a portal underneath the chopper which discarded all the men inside, dropping them all to their deaths. Chun Xiao, smirking with sheer delight, proceeded to store the entire chopper in his dimensional space. This scene shocked Captain Wu and his men into a stupor. With the enemy forces completely wiped out, Yu suddenly rushed out of the fortress. The Lee couple hugged their daughter in tears, apologizing for making her wait so long. You see, it had been 4 years since the Lee couple first went missing, and their college daughter, Li Yu from back then, has long since graduated and grown up. Chun Xiao, visibly pleased by this harmonious scene, soon led them all into his apartment. He asked the 2 who exactly took them. Professor Lee replied that the man called himself as Young Master. Hearing this, Chun Xiao's face darkened as Professor Lee continued, revealing that the young master forced them to use their experience from Huaxia Academy of Science to research something. Elisa then added that the young master was her former boss. He was also the one Chun Xiao's ex-girlfriend went to work for, but he kept running inhuman experiments, so she betrayed him. Hearing of this young master, Chen Xiao soon realized that he must be the one who killed him in his previous life. However, this time around, he had to get rid of him first. Mu Chong chimed in, questioning the two what exactly they were captured for. The Li couple stared at each other for a brief moment before revealing the angel's heart. They explained that it only needs a tiny amount of energy to cool down a massive area. With this, all of humanity could survive the scorching apocalypse.